I stayed a shot caller for 20 years. She worked for the prison.
Yeah.
She became a workhorse. Anything I wanted, I got. Some of the smaller flip phones, you could hoop on. When I was about 4, somebody tried to kidnap my brother. Right, they pulled the swamp cooler out of the window, reached in. The guy had tar on his hands, grabbed my brother by the ankle, was trying to pull him out of the bunk bed. We were on bunk beds. I was on the bottom, he was on top. And fortunately, he didn't get him. My brother held on, screaming. My father and this guy, Fredo, who was like my grandmother's friend,
Right.
was at the house and came running in, and the dude let him go.
But
This
this is
took
like
off
a
running.
fucking horror movie.
Right. So then I wake up, you know, and I'm scared. I'm quiet. I'm like hoping I'm not next. Right? I don't know what's going on. And I write about, there's an article online that I did when I was in prison, because that was like the moment where things changed for me. Like life was normal.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden they weren't. You know, life changed drastically. Like it's not all rainbows and butterflies and, you know.
There are monsters out there.
Yeah, right? And like I was afraid. I didn't want to sleep in the room anymore. I didn't want to sleep near the window. We shut the window now. We didn't have the swamp cooler, and it's 108 degrees outside, right? My dad thought it'd be a good idea to scare us. Like go to the window and scare us, right? And then tell us we're, you know, sissies, or he used a more colorful language.
Right.
Right. And for me, every time I got scared, and my dad called me a sissy or, you know, the P word, right?
Yeah.
I know we probably couldn't say it, it's YouTube, but it meant that like fear, anytime I felt fear, it was a weakness. Even at a young age, I might not have been able to connect the dots at that age, like what was going on. But I also remembered that like anytime I displayed any kind of like violent behavior, people thought I was not scared, you know?
Yeah.
So growing up, like I became like the schoolyard daredevil. Before I became violent, I would jump off the highest rung of the jungle gym. I at one time rode a motorcycle off the school roof into a swimming pool, you know, because somebody told me I was a pussy if I didn't do it.
Right.
That was the only reason. There was no like, I was like, nah, man, I'm not gonna do that. You're a pussy. Let's go. You know, stupid shit, right? After that, I just started, anytime there was an issue, I was the first one to fight. And you know, like kids do, you know, you push first a couple of times, and then eventually it became easier and you just start punching. And so I grew up in that, but I would always go back to juvenile for fighting, for ditching school, whatever the case might be, right? I would get
Are you burglarizing? Had you
not
burglarized?
yet.
Okay.
Not yet. So I started out with like just breaking car windows. That was like the extent of my criminality for a long time, because I'm an adrenaline junkie. Like I've never used drugs.
Right.
So as a kid, breaking a car window, you get all excited and you run away, and it was fun. And we'd talk crap about it for a while, or we brag about it. Then I started stealing shit out of the cars. And then people were like, oh, hey, I'll buy that from you.
Right.
I'm like, oh, really? It's just a CD player. Who cares? Or a tape deck. At that time, it was tape decks, right?
Right.
You know, the pullouts, they were like real popular back then. So then after that, I started doing burglaries. This guy, a friend of mine, he's a little bit older. His name was JC. His dad would sell me weed for the items that I would steal. And then I would sell the weed, you know, but he wouldn't like just take my cash. He wanted TVs, and he wanted tools, and he wanted things, you know?
Right.
I think he was a tweaker. Looking back on it, at the time, I didn't know what the hell a tweaker was. But looking back on it, I think he was just a tweaker who got cheap and got expensive tools and TVs and stuff for that, right? So me and JC started breaking into houses. We ended up getting arrested, ironically, for breaking into a friend of mine's house, right? And we didn't steal anything. We just broke in and watched TV and ate his food while they were on vacation, drank his wine. But when
I've had a few guys that have broken into places and like made themselves a meal and watched TV. It's like,
Yeah.
I would be thinking, I need to get out of here as soon as possible.
Well, we knew they were gone for vacation. They were my friend. They lived just a few houses up the road, and they were friends of the family. I knew they had left. I didn't like knock their door down or break their windows. I just knew how to get into their house because
Right.
I'd been in that way with them many times. So we went in there and like literally sat on their couch, watched movies, ate food, drank their wine, you know, thought we were drunk when we probably weren't, you know, but acted like we were. And when they came home, their house was trashed. So they called the cops,
Right.
as people do, right? And one of the neighbors was like, well, we seen Tommy and Todd and JC go in there. So we all got arrested
Right.
for burglary. And that was like, now I'm a felony, you know, even at 12 or 13. I think it was almost 13.
And that sent you to juvie?
Juvenile hall. And then right after that, I started stealing cars. Right. Then I became this guy. I stole my mom's car first. I know she owned these car lots. So I took one of her cars, like these used car lots.
Right.
I took one for a joyride. This girl she goes, I only date people that drive. She was 14. She's older than me by a year, right? But she's like, I only date guys that drive. So I'm like, I drive.
Right.
Right. So I stole the keys to my mom's car and I took it and I went picked her up, and, then I got arrested, right, in a stolen car.
Right.
My mom called it in stolen, as she's supposed to do, right?
Yeah, yeah. And what, they pulled you over?
Yeah, actually, I got caught by my parents.
Okay.
But they had already called the cops, so they arrested me, took me back to juvenile hall. And then,
I had a buddy who was 14 or 15 years old. I went to school on Davis Island, which is in downtown Tampa, little island, and his dad had a Corvette, a brand new Corvette. His dad was like a fucking filthy rich lawyer to live on Davis Island. These houses are millions. And we went to school at Davis Island. His dad was gone for like a couple days. He was staying home by himself. He took the keys to the car, came to school. I mean, this is a small school, like everybody knows. And then I think during lunch, took the car and was doing donuts in the parking lot down the street, and the cops pull him over. Or they pull up and he stops, and they pull up and they walk up to him. They're like, "We license and registration." He's like, "I don't have a license. I'm 15.
Yeah.
Like, he knew he was fucked.
Yeah.
He knew he was fucked. But it's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You got to know this is going to catch up with you. It's because he's a maniac.
Yeah.
The same thing. You're stealing your mom's fucking car. Like, you got to know that's catching up with you. What are you going to do? Drop it back off?
That was the idea. I lived there. I
Right.
was going to take off, right? I was going to come back and put it back. That was the idea. But she heard it start.
Right.
And she didn't know I had left. So I pushed it down the road, but there was like a little bit of a muffler issue with the car at the time. And so when I started it, she heard it start. And then she came out and it was gone.
Right.
And me and my friend Jason took off. We were running down, and we coming through like town, and all of a sudden this car is like driving towards me like it's going to head on collision. I'm in a parking lot at the time. And I look, I swerve and I miss. We miss, and I look in there. It's my dad and my mom. I'm like, what the hell? So I took off, got in a high-speed chase with my dad right down in the middle of town, And my dad's a race car driver, right? So, right? It was like a losing battle to start with. And then I'm looking at the gas gauge, and I'm like, I'm not going to make it very far. Because the idea, we were actually on our way to my mom's car lot to get money that I knew she had stashed in like a Folgers can, right? And I wasn't going to steal it. I was going to say enough to put gas in the car, right? Take this girl out. I was excited. And next thing you know, that's my dad's chasing me. So we got caught. I just pulled over. My friend Jason's like, man, pull over, right? We're in trouble. Just pull over. So I pulled over, and I come here. My dad opened the car door and just punched me. Bang. And my dad's never hit me, right? At that time, like, I don't think he's ever really hit me, right? But he's grabbed me and punched me. Bang, hard. I was like, oh, shit. But then he backed up and he stopped. And my friend Jason took off running. So my dad chased after him. And my mom caught him. So I took off. I'm like, no, I'm out of here. So I hid underneath this trailer. There was a camper shell on the ground in front of somebody's house. And I hid underneath the camper shell, and I laid there. And my parents were looking for me with Jason. Jason's like, come on, Tommy, it's over. Just come out. And I'm just laying there. Right. I'm like, I ain't coming out. My dad's going to kick my ass. I've never been hit like that from my dad. I mean, he punched me like a man, and I'm not coming out. And I just laid there. They left. And I still laid there, scared. And this guy comes walking by, and I look out, and it's my friend Todd, the one I burglarized the house with.
Mm-hmm.
It happened to be his grandpa's house that I was underneath the trailer at his grandpa's house, or a camper shell, whatever. I was like, what the hell? So he took me in. I stayed the night there. But the next day, we got the bright idea that we were going to go solicit for money we had a bucket that said YMCA on it.
Right.
So we just went house to house asking for money for donations for YMCA. Well, we ended up getting caught. Right. Somebody that worked at the YMCA gave us money in the form of a check.
Right.
We couldn't say no. We're like, if we say no, they're going to know it's a scam, right? Right. He gave us money in the form of a check. So we went and separated the money. And while we were doing it, the cop pulled up and it was over. We're coming out of the store. He's like, come here, man. I'm like, what? acted like I didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
And then he goes, "Aren't you Tommy Traughber?" "Yeah." He goes, "There's a warrant out for you." I'm like, "Okay." Because my mom had already told the cops that I was the one that stole the vehicle.
Yeah.
So they took me to juvenile.
How long did you do?
Not that long, like maybe like a month. But what happened was the judge, I gave my mom an ultimatum. "Look, you do something about him or we're going to do it.
Right.
You're not going to like what we're going to do." So my mom asked the judge if she could send me to Oklahoma with her brother. She has a brother that's out there, real small town, Oklahoma. She sent me out there. He said, yeah, on the contingency that he doesn't come back until he's like 18. And I think it was 18 or 16. I can't remember. But anyway, a long time. At 12, 13 years old, that looks like forever.
Right.
So I went out there. I didn't last but 4 months. My uncle sent me back. Yeah. He's like, "I can't handle this kid." But I wasn't really even committing any crime. I wasn't doing anything. I was going to school. It was summer, so I finished the school year there and then went into summer, and I was doing just fine. There was this kid, Shane, that he asked me to stop hanging out with because Shane got busted with some marijuana at school, right? And we're now in junior high school. And I'm like, okay, I'll stop hanging out with him. But like a couple of days later, I seen Shane on the street. Like, he's like, "Hey, man, I hadn't heard from you a couple of days. What's going on?" I'm like, "Oh, my Uncle Mike told me not to hang out with you." He's like, "Oh, okay, that's cool." He goes, "Yeah, a lot of parents are doing that right now." I'm like, "Okay." And then my Uncle Mike drives by.
He just happened to be.
He happened to be coming home from work. I was coming back from the bowling alley. He's like, "Get in." And then he tried to smack me. When he tried to smack me, I blocked it. And he's like, "Oh, you're a smart ass too." I'm like, "Oh, I'm just used to it." My mom used to do it. That was my mom's thing. Bang, right? Backhand or slap or whatever. I got used to blocking him. So I went to the house and he came in the room and just took me to the ground and beat me, broke my nose. And
Holy shit.
Yeah, like he fucked me up, So he felt like when he seen the blood going everywhere, because I'm laying on my back and he's on top of me and he's probably 300 pounds, and he's just pounding me. He's like, "Oh shit." He stopped and he started crying and went and got a nice rag, with ice in it, some water, cleaned me up. He's like, "Man, I'm so sorry, And then like a week later, I was back in California. He bought a ticket. He's like, "You're out of here," So I went back to my mom and I wasn't home a week and I was arrested. As soon as the cops see me walking down the street, because I wasn't supposed to be in California anymore. That's like they all knew. I had already been building a reputation for myself. So
They arrest you for
just for violating the court order. For not being back. I was back in the court order was I didn't come back to California until I was like 16 or 18.
Okay.
And so they sent me back to juvenile hall and they're like, "We're going to send you to group homes or camps or placements." My mom begged them to send me home.
Mhm.
And so one more time they sent me home. And there's this guy, Ralph, that used to work for my mom. I worked behind my mom. And he's like, "Man, I heard you like to steal cars." I'm like, "No, it was just one time." He's like, "Well, next time you steal one, then let me know. I'll buy it from you." I'm like, "What?"
Who are these fucking
Right?
This is that shit.
But this guy's
14-year-old kid.
I was younger than that, right? I was 13 and he has he's this guy. So from like a movie, he wears the flower shirts that are open with the big hairy chest and all the gold chains and the cowboy boots.
Magnum PI.
Yeah, but he was his Hispanic Mexican guy, right? Like from Mexico, had a hard accent and had the, silver tip boots and stuff like that, right? He looked like something right out of a freaking stereotype, right? So he's like, "Hey, if everyone," I thought he was just playing. So at first I was like, "No, I'm good." But then one day I seen him back there because he had a mechanic shop. And I'm like, "Are you serious about that?" And he goes, "Yeah, no." He goes, "Man," "you should be getting paid for that." I'm like, "All right." So then I got the bright idea I was going to steal cars, So I was taking him cars. And at that age, and at that time, it was just about 91, $200-$300 to a kid was a massive amount of money.
It's a ton of money.
So he'd pay me like $150, $200, depending on the car. One time he paid me $50. I got mad. I'm like, he goes, "It's a piece of shit car. It's a 71 LTD. Nobody wants them." So I'm like, all right, whatever.
What's he doing? Breaking them down? And
Yeah, he was like,
or
I think because he had a mechanic shop, so I think he billed people for new parts and just put used parts on there and he just keep the cash. Or he would just VIN them out. Back then you could VIN the cars pretty easy, and he would sell them. Like he'd take a car from the junkyard or that was scrap and he'd just swap them and sell it with a salvage title.
right.
But he'd get a ton of money out of it, because it's still, "Oh man, this car's brand new. It's still. Why has he got a salvage title? Oh, it had a little fender bender. Insurance company just, scrapped it or whatever, right? But it's really a car that had a blown engine or it's totaled, completely totaled or whatever. I didn't get into like the nuance of it.
Yeah.
I was too young, didn't care. He's paying me. I'm running around playing video games because I didn't use drugs or nothing.
Yeah.
I just go play video games and buy fancy stuff and tobacco, like I dip tobacco or whatever, right? And then I got arrested again for stealing a car. Oh, actually, me and my friend Jason Too Good stole a pickup truck from the YMCA, ironically, right? We broke into all the lockers and stole a bunch of cash and took a pickup truck and drove it to Tucson, Arizona, where his dad lived, because he had been getting beat on by his stepdad. So we took it to, bad, like broke his arm, like hurting him. So we drove it from Santa Maria to Tucson, Arizona, which is probably like 1,000 miles, 900 miles, right? We went the long way too. We went all the way to San Diego, then over, and we ended up getting arrested at a gas station. We pulled into a gas station that had just been burglarized, not knowing. We pulled in. It was a closed gas station. We didn't even know it was closed because the lights were on. So we pulled in to get gas. And as soon as we pulled in, like 3 cop cars just rushed us. And, did the whole felony stop on us? We're like little kids. So we're like, all right. They put us in juvenile hall there in Tucson, flew us back to California. After that, the judge was done. He's like, you're going to this placement, this group home or whatever. But then I got to the first group home when I was probably like 13-ish. And it was in a place called Los Osos, called Monarch Manor. And I wasn't there that long. I remember it was around Christmas time. And I stole the counselor's car. Me and this dude Frank took off. Right. And I know.
Right.
I was like,
did you have the keys?
Yeah, they left the keys in they put them in the visor.
Right.
And I was like, and we knew they did because we already all the counselors there for some reason trusted us. We're all delinquent, juvenile,
right,
felons, but they would leave their cars. There's this lady Molly. She had a big Bronco, beautiful Bronco, and she just leave the keys in it. We were going to actually steal her car, but somebody told on us to her, saying, hey, they're going to steal your car. So that day she didn't have the keys in it. But we ended up stealing the other guy. I don't even remember his name. I remember her name because she was pretty. She was only like 20 and she was beautiful. Right at the time we were young, Then after that, where'd I go? They sent me to this camp in Santa Barbara. And that was just gangsters, all gangsters, And it's and I've been involved in not gang banging, but I've been around them.
Right.
A lot, growing up there in the neighborhood, but also juvenile hall, other places. And this is the first time where I got the real taste of I'm white, right. I'm not Mexican. And even though all my friends were mostly Mexican, I'm not, right. That was the first time I really experienced that in a lockdown setting,
Wasn't working for you? Didn't work out?
Well, I went, the whites were we were in Santa Barbara County, bro. It's not that big a deal, but I realized I went to go hang out with a couple of dudes that I knew from the streets when I got there.
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, bro, this is Northwest Tables. That's the gang right there, right? I'm like,
what does that mean?
Yeah, I was like, so what?
You can't sit here.
Yeah, and they're like, no, you can't sit here. I'm like, where am I supposed to sit, They're like, and even some of the other guys, man, he's cool. He's not from our area. He's not from our gang, right? Okay. So then I'll go hang out with the whites. I knew the whites too. I knew them from juvenile hall or from, different places in town. So it wasn't that big a deal. He was just that's not who I gravitated towards at the time. And then I ended up running from camp, escaping from there a couple times, I think 3 times. They ended up sending me to another place, a lockdown facility, all the way down to Riverside. I don't know how familiar you are with California. That's a long way away from home for me.
Right.
Right. So, it's about a 4-hour drive. For my family, but they sent me there. I did really well there for a long time. Actually, it was cool. I was like, I'm going to work this program so I can go home. And the lady there, man, she had this counselor, man. And I don't know what was wrong with her, but she couldn't stand me, especially towards the end, the last 6 months. Not the last 6 months, but the last couple months I was there, she was on me. And I was like, what am I doing wrong? And then I went to court and the judge told me, you give me 3 more months there, I don't care. You're going home. He goes, this is the first time you've done good in your life, right? So I'm like, yeah, okay. I get back from court and I'm all excited. I'm like, I only have 3 more months. No matter what, only 3 more months here. And I tell her name was Lisa, right? Lisa Moschini. I say, man, Lisa, I only got 3 more months. She goes, over my dead body, will you go home in May? I'm like, well, then shit on it. I'm not doing nothing. And that was it. I started fighting. I ended up getting kicked out for brandishing a weapon. I had made a knife out of a pair of glasses, like the arms of the glass. They have like pointy part. I stripped it out. And so me and some kids were having some. That's when I just like, who gives you shit, So then they sent me back to juvenile hall and then to another group home where they actually just kicked me out because they closed the group home, sent me home. And then I went to YA right after that.
Went to what?
California Authority, YA. I went to YA at like 14-ish, 15-ish. And then I did all the way until I was about 17. I got out right after my 17th birthday, 6 days. And within 4.5 months, I was in prison for murder, home invasion murder.
What happened there?
So earlier, I got out. I was trying to do good, first of all, but it just wasn't working. Like life was, I had a job at Wendy's. I was like, okay, I'm going to go, because the parole mandated you either have a job or go to school. Well, it's summertime. There's no school. And so I got a job at Wendy's like right away. But me and my mom always butted heads, period. Like no matter what. So right after I got out, we just immediately, like oil and water, it's not getting along. And, she's threatening to send me back to youth authority. She's threatened, I should have put you in foster care, things like that, right? And for a young kid very immature at the time, even at 17, I was immature, even for being a 17-year-old. I thought to myself, well, shit, then there's no point. Everything I do is going to send me back. So I just screwed everything, as I'm done. And then I end up robbing her stuff, and she called the cops on me. But,
robbing her stuff.
Like her safe. I broke into her safe and took her cash, right? I was going to take off with my girlfriend. My girlfriend said she was pregnant. And so, okay, we're going to split. And we had this great idea where we were going to go to New Mexico with her grandma who lived on an Indian reservation. And we were going to be like Bonnie and Clyde, right? We were kids. Mm-hmm. And they didn't, when I got the cash, I told her, okay, I got the cash. I went and bought a car. I was like, let's go. She's like, no, I don't want to leave my sister. I'm like, damn. So now I'm stuck. I can't put the money back because I've already bought a car.
Right.
So then my mom comes home. My mom was in jail, right, at the time for hitting some chick with a beer mug, right? So my mom's not like a criminal at the time. She just got into a fight.
Right.
But she hit this chick with a beer mug and they put her in jail for it. Made her do weekends.
You can't do that.
You can't, right? Yeah. Somebody should have told her not to be hitting us either, right? But she goes to jail does weekends, for this. It's not like she was, out there committing crime. She owned car lots, like used car lots. She was, normal, but not normal. But you know what I mean? So when she was gone, that was like 2 days that I had. I would have to cut off my ankle bracelet. I was on a monitor at the time. I was going to have to do that, but I'm glad I didn't do it at the time because my parole officer was like, look, we're not going to send you back because your mom doesn't want to press charges. So we're going to move you to your dad's house. All right. So I go to my dad's and, at the time I was doing okay. I wasn't doing bad, but I got my brother. My dad had like 8 or 9 kids, right? My mom only has 3. And one of my brothers is 9 years older than me. So, and he was involved in like the drug scene there and all that stuff. And so I started working with this dude, Jeff, to move dope around town. He'd let me borrow his BMW. We drive around town and I'd sell drugs for him. Which I was like, cool, I'm making way more money than I was at Wendy's. Right. Wendy's was $4.25, and you're limited to 26 hours a week. So I'm like, this is awesome. And then, so I started doing that and selling, like and shit like that. And then I started doing armed robberies, started robbing the Vons around town. Right.
Who?
The Vons is like a grocery store in California.
Okay.
Right. Started robbing.
How does that come about?
Well, because I needed money to buy.
Okay.
Right. I wanted to buy a massive amount. I thought I was going to become this high power dealer. Everybody smokes weed. Not everybody does black. Not everybody does white. Not everybody does, but everybody smokes the green stuff.
Right.
Right. From 12 to 80. Right. I knew people that smoked. So I was like, okay, I'm going to sell that because that's the biggest commodity. But I need money. I knew a guy would sell it to me, but I needed money. So I'm like, how am I, this little nickel and diming? Because I would sell this stuff for this dude, Jeff, and I get paid throughout a day like $50, you know, $100.
But you got to drive his car.
I got to drive his cool ass car, convertible BMW. And at the time, you know, $50, $100, it was all right.
Your kid, yeah.
Oh, yeah, my kid. It was all right. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to do that. That didn't work. I was like, this ain't working. And I didn't really like Jeff. I just didn't like him. I didn't like his personality. Didn't get along, but he had connections and at the time, I've been in youth authority, so I understood, keep your mouth shut.
Yeah.
Right. And then we can go into youth authority too if you want, because it was a tremendous shift in my criminality, my criminal thought process. Youth authority turned me into a monster. By the time I left there, it was, you know, I didn't mind killing people. I didn't mind hurting people. I didn't mind stealing from people, robbing from people. You know, like, didn't care how I got it. I was going to do it, you know. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to start robbing bonds. And it was only by accident. I was in line with my grandma and I seen the safe and it was open. The manager was at the safe and there was a ton of cash in there. I was like, that's where I can get the money. But how am I going to get it? I thought, you know, I'm a burglar at the time. Like, I'm a break-in kind of thief. I'm not a armed robber.
Right.
So I was like, how am I going to get it? So I started talking to my friend Tim. He's like, just rob them. And then I had been in youth authority. It was like, that's all anybody did. I talked about like all these kids, they're in there for armed robberies, murders, all this stuff. And that's all they're talking about. Oh, it's easy. It's easy. Excuse me.
So easy. What are they doing in prison?
Well,
you know,
as a kid, and you don't think about that part.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when I was getting ready for parole in prison. And briefly, I'll talk about it. I was sitting there going to these groups and listening to all these guys tell me how to get out of prison. But these are all the guys that got denied.
Yeah.
Right. And they're telling me I'm like their crash test dummy. I'm going in there telling them, I'm like thinking to myself, I did everything they asked me to say. I mean, everything we talked about, I did.
Right.
Why didn't I get granted? Right. And then I was like, wait a minute. I'm listening to the wrong people.
Yeah.
I need to start listening to the people that got granted, not the people that got denied or the people that's never been to prison.
Mm-hmm.
So I went and actually started talking to a therapist. I was like, hey, I want you to read these transcripts and tell me what I'm saying or what I'm doing wrong. And she's like, okay. Oh man, I was doing a lot wrong. Right. So, but anyway, back to I started robbing the Vons. At first I would rob just robbed the one, you know, and then it was like, okay, still not enough money.
What'd you do? Did you go in with a gun?
Yeah,
Did
with
you
a
have
pistol.
somebody else with you?
Yeah, that first time, no. Right. My friend Tim was like, just rob him, dude. It's easy. He's even gave me a pistol. Right. Just go in there. I'm like, all right. So I remember I stole a Ford because I had this ignition for a Ford with a key. And if you just unplugged them, you could plug in the old ones, right? The 70s versions. And back in the 90s, they were still very prevalent around town. So I would just take one and I parked it in the parking lot of the Vons. I remember I was sweating profusely, right? Pouring sweat. And I'm sitting there and every little noise I thought was the cops coming for me, you know, and I'm thinking, oh, they already know. How do they know? You're super paranoid. But I'm like, I just got to do it. I was pumping myself up. I think I sat out there. It might only been like 20 minutes, but it felt like hours. And then as soon as I opened, this is how dumb I was. As soon as I opened the car door, I was parked halfway into the parking lot, which is a long ways. I ran into the freaking Vons.
Did you have a ski mask or anything?
Yeah, I had a shirt that I had like tied around my head to where the neck hole was around my eyes. And I went in there and I'm like, give me all your money, right? Everybody looked at me. At first, nobody moved. They just looked at me like I was stupid. Or that's how I felt, right? Like, really? They thought it was like a joke, maybe, at first.
Right.
And then I'm like, and the manager was right there. I was like, man, open the safe. He looked at the gun and he's like, scared. And he's like, I don't have the code. I'm like, you're the manager. How you not have the code? And then he opened it. Right. And there was nothing in it. There was only like $800, right? I just seen a ton of cash in there. And I'm thinking to myself, how is there only $800? You know, I mean, at the time, I was just seeing a little bundle of money. And it was because the Brinks truck had just left. You know, they had enough for the day.
Yeah.
And they were coming back with more. They didn't have, I was like, oh man. Well, I didn't know that time, but I learned later that there's times you can do it where you're more likely to get more money.
Right.
So I left and upset because now I can't buy the weed, you know. So I was like, what am I going to do? I'll just rob another one.
Yeah, because make it up on volume.
Yeah. So I started at one end of town. and I robbed the Vons on the south end of town, then robbed the Vons on the north end of town, and then robbed the Vons on the west side of town, all in one day.
And what are you getting 1,000?
Well, yeah, like,
or
well, I didn't do it the same day.
yeah,
I waited a couple weeks because I had to pump myself up for it. And then, like, I came up with this master plan. So I ended up getting probably total, I don't remember how much from each one, because I would like literally drove from one to the next, and just kept throwing it in the trunk until, and when I got done, I had almost $12,000, right? But that was enough to buy the weed.
Yeah.
It was enough to buy the weed. So I was like, I want to go buy this weed. I'm excited. But now I got to drive all the way to Humboldt County, which from where I live is a long ways. So Emerald Triangle. So I went up there and I talked to the guy that I knew that my brother introduced me to. He gave me a turkey bag with 5 pounds of weed. I came home. I was super excited. And I'm going to break this down into little baggies. I'm going to make a fortune. I get robbed.
How do you get robbed?
Because my brother told on me. Right. So at the time I didn't know. I'm pulling into the apartment where my brother lives, and I'm going to go count this weed. And then as soon as I opened the door, this guy put a gun to my head. I was like, get out of the car, get out of the car. So I'm like, oh, I thought they were still in the car.
Right.
So I'm like, oh, shit. And I had a gun, but I was like, there's no way I'm going to get to this before he gets me.
Right.
So I stepped out, and he jumps in. But one thing I was telling him, I was like, man, I recognize the voice. I couldn't remember like where I heard this voice, but I was like, I know this voice. So I'm like, all right. But I just stepped out and he took off. And when I ran to the back of the alley, so the drive, it kind of goes in a corner, like in an L shape. And he turns this way and there's a whole nother apartment complex there. I seen him and he stopped. I'm like, what? What he's doing? And he gets in the trunk, takes gets in another car and takes off and leaves my car there.
Right.
So I'm like, oh, he knew.
Yeah.
I knew right then he knew. I'm not dumb. I mean, I might be a stupid kid, but I wasn't like totally dumb.
And the only person that knew you had the
brother,
just your brother?
Just my brother. Right. And I put it together right away and so I went, man, Jimmy, who'd you tell? So I didn't tell nobody. I'm like, you told somebody, bro. Because nobody, he goes, well, maybe dude told somebody. I'm like, oh yeah, maybe. But why? Why would he lose business? I couldn't put it together. And I don't know how many days or weeks went by. It was a few. And I heard my brother say that dude's name. And his name is Grumpy. His street name is Grumpy. And as soon as he said his name, it clicked. That was the voice.
Right.
And I went, you're fucking lying to me. So I told my brother, you lied to me, man. He's like, no, I didn't say nothing to Grumpy. I'm like, you lied. So I decided I was going to go get my stuff back, and I ended up kicking the door into this house. Me and a friend of mine, Travis.
To his house, to Grumpy's house.
Yes, but it wasn't his house. We thought it was his house. It was his mom's house.
Okay.
Right. He didn't live with his mom, but he was there. So we knocked the door down, run in there, guns drawn, and then I'm trying to get my stuff back. Hey, I don't have it, and then this lady comes running in the room and my co-defendant blows her away. Yeah. Not knowing she was there.
He just saw the movement.
Yeah. And he
got scared.
Yeah. I mean, from his perspective, he didn't tell me that. He just said, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what else to do,
Right.
And he was panicking afterwards because this guy ran. So I turned around like, oh shit, we're being shot at. Because I just heard a gunshot. And then, so I'm turning around to find out what's going on. And this guy runs out the front door. It's over. I'm like, let's get out of here. We didn't get nothing.
Right.
Nothing.
But for sure, the Grumpy knows who you are.
He knows who I am.
And your buddy just shot his mother.
So we take off and I'm like, I don't know what to do. I get back to Travis's house. I'm like, I think I'm going to have to kill Travis, right? Because I'm thinking like, I'm not going to jail for this.
Right.
So I'm going to smoke him. Because he's the only one that knows I was involved. I'll find Grumpy. I know he's a heroin addict. Just go to spots. Right. I'm going to find this dude, right? So, but then I started thinking about Travis's mom. Travis' mom was like a mom to me. So Travis, my very first time going to juvenile hall for the burglary was Todd. Travis was Todd's brother. So it's like family. We grew up in the same neighborhood. We grew up together. We were friends.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I'm like, if I kill Travis, I'm going to have to kill his mom. And then I'm going to have to kill Todd. I'm going to have to go through this. So, I mean, I'm thinking like, man, I can't do this. Right? That's too far.
Yeah.
Right? it's the chain of events. It's just too much. So I'm like, whatever. I just told Travis, look, bro, if we get caught, you need to eat this.
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't know what to do. He'd never been in trouble for it. He'd been like doing burglaries and stuff, but nothing like this, I've been in youth authority. He's never even been arrested. So I'm like, oh man. So
you're still done. Even if he,
close.
Yeah, you don't, do you realize at the time?
I'm thinking if we get
being
caught,
there means you committed a murder.
Yeah, felony murder rule, right? I didn't even know what it was at the time. I know what it is now.
Yeah.
Right.
You're thinking he did it. I may have kicked in a door, been with him, but he killed somebody.
Yeah. So I'm thinking I'm good.
Yeah.
Right. And then I get, like 2 days later, I'm arrested. Right. Not because Grumpy told on me. Ironically, Travis told Todd and Todd told on us.
How old are you?
17. Right. And it was an eventful 4.5 months that I was out, dude. I was only out 4.5 months. So I get back. Now I get arrested. They put me back in youth authority. At the time, El Paso was called El Paso de Robles, but in Paso Robles, California, they had a youth authority, but that was the county where the crime was committed. So they held me there while I was going back and forth to court. And I thought my crime had told on me. So I didn't know. I just got arrested. Mm-hmm. And when they had the details, like when I was in the police department and they were running down details, I'm like, the only person that knows any of that is Travis.
Right.
Right. Because you're talking about before the crime, not just after, So I'm thinking, man, Travis told on me. Right. And so I called my dad in, say, can he call my dad? Because when I was living at my dad's house, my dad came down to the police department as soon as I got arrested. And he said, yeah, I'll bring your dad in. So I was talking to my dad. I just told him everything. Like, look, Dad, this is what's going on. Well, he goes, we're going to get a lawyer. All right. Why? My dad's an old biker dude. So he's involved in the criminal lifestyle.
Yeah.
Or at that time, he was kind of out of it, but he had been for a lot of years.
Yeah, he's not a novice to this.
So he's like, look, dude, So I'm like, all right. What we didn't know at the time was the detective was standing outside the door and the door's cracked. We're not really thinking, no, I'm copped everything already. And they're writing everything down. Because I'm telling my dad, that's what happened. And so I'm like, oh, shit. Now I'm screwed. No matter what. I didn't know it at the time. I didn't know until after I was arrested and I got the paperwork that this guy was sitting there writing everything we were saying down. I thought I had some kind of anonymity, because it's my dad, right? Almost like a lawyer, like some sort of privilege,
Right.
And you would think being in the system as much as I had, I would have known that. But I thought parents were kind of like husband and wife. You can't force one to testify against the other, right? Now, they couldn't have forced my dad, and they said that. We can't force you to testify. But because the detective heard what was said,
right,
he can testify to it. So, because my dad refused. They were talking about putting him in jail. He's like, I ain't testifying to this. So I ended up getting locked up. After a couple years in the county jail, I actually beat up my co-defendant in the van one day, thinking he was the one. And he was like, no, it's Todd, And I'm like, how did he know? Oh, I told him.
Right.
Oh, okay. Makes sense, So we ended up getting life sentences, both of us. But
did you plead to it or did you go to
No,
trial?
I went to trial. I went to a judge trial. I thought going to a judge trial would save me, like the judge has to follow the letter of the law. At the time, because what I had told my dad was, I lied to my dad.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I never even went inside the house.
Right.
I was just there. Right. My dad's like, okay. So that's what they presented to the judge. So they didn't find me guilty of actually even going inside the house. They used my statement and said, it's easy. Done.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's the guy says, I know about these two guys who were robbing banks. Yeah. You go, oh, how do you know? I was driving the getaway car.
Yeah.
You were robbing the banks.
Yeah. So they end up finding me. He took a deal pretty early on, my co-defendant, once they tried us as adults. So we had to go through this whole juvenile process where you do fitness hearings, and it's like a trial. It's like a kind of like an evidentiary hearing almost. Have you ever been to one of those, or you know what they are?
Yeah.
So evidentiary hearing, it's kind of like that, but it's whether or not they're going to try you as an adult. There was 5 criteria at the time in the 90s. This is 1995. There was 5 criteria. And if you met one of the 5,
mm-hmm.
they tried you as an adult. Or they could try you as an adult. Now, it's different. It's like if you meet one of the 5, and one of those 5 is, can he be rehabilitated? And the answer is yes, then they can't try you as an adult anymore.
Okay.
Right? So California's changed that law recently, but by then I already done all my time. So we went to, and it's not retroactive, which whatever. But so I ended up going to the judge trial, got found guilty. Obviously, they sentenced me to life without parole. So I was like, I'm never getting out of prison. You know, I go to prison. A lot of people don't even know that I was sentenced to life without. I just told them, oh, I was sentenced same as Travis, same as Travis, same as Travis. You know, because you know, how you tell your mom?
Right.
You know, Mom, I just got life without parole because she didn't even come. You know, she went to court, but that day she's like, she couldn't do it. You know, my dad was there, but my dad didn't even know I got sentenced to life without. He's like, oh, it's 7 to life. Because back in the days when like Charlie Manson, all them got their LWOPs, it was only 7 to life.
Right.
So everybody's thinking like I'm like, I'm not getting out of prison.
Yeah.
And then on appeal, I went back to court and they dismissed the LWOP down to 26 to life. They said you should have never got it. Right. Just you know, it was just the way it was. And the judge was like, we had a new judge this time, and he was like, there's no way, you're not even the shooter.
Right.
And that doesn't even make any sense to me. But I had already received another life sentence in prison. So they were like,
for what?
A murder in 1999.
Well, how does that happen?
Well, I went into prison, so I went in young.
What year did you go in?
In 97, I got to prison.
Okay.
Right. I got locked up in 95, spent 2 years in the county jail, and then got to prison in 97. And I was in reception for about a month. Then they transferred me to High Desert. And if you've been doing this a long time, you've heard of High Desert.
Yeah, I've heard of High Desert.
High Desert is a terrible place to do time, right? It's a violent prison. At the time, whites were at war with everybody. So they're sending me over to D6 at the time. And 7 and 8 had just been converted to like ADSEG, like administrative segregation or security housing unit. It's not a SHU, it's ADSEG prior to the SHU. So it's just 5 and 6 block programming on the yard at the time. But the officer, he has me in handcuffs behind my back, and I'm got a roll behind my back too, like carrying it with my hands. It's in a pillowcase. And he's like, oh, before we go out to the yard, I just want you to know that you're at war with everybody out here. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, well, you're a Wood, right? I'm like, yeah, I'm a Wood. He's like, you're at war with everybody out here. I was like, what does that mean? He's like, everybody out here wants to get you. And I'm looking at this cop, and he's this little skinny cop. I'm thinking they're going to walk me across the yard full of a bunch of guys, you know, that want to get me with this dude.
Right.
You know? And I'm like, I don't know what to say. I'm just like, fuck, I'm screwed. So open the door and we walk across it, and everybody's staring at me. Everybody stares at the new guy. Yeah. You're still in a paper jumpsuit. You know, you're not in blues. You don't have your blues yet. You don't get those until you get to the yard after you get off orientation or right before you get off orientation. So I'm like, dude, I'm screwed, you know? And, but nobody did anything, you know? But I was like, man, there's some big ass dudes out here. I was a little kid. I was 19 years old. There's guys in their 30s, 40s, and we still had weights in prison at the time. So they're big guys. And I'm thinking to myself, man, I'm screwed, you know? But I get across the yard. I get to my cell. Cop leaves. I asked my cellie. I said, hey, man, are we at war? He's like, oh, yeah, we're at war with the blacks. It wasn't with everybody, but it was with the blacks, right? I'm like, oh, okay, cool. You know, he's like, all right. So at that time, High Desert had, they would give you your property right off the bus. So they changed it, and then they bring it back, change it, bring it back. But at the time, I had got all my transcripts and stuff from court. So I sold to my cellie. My cellie was this guy named Rex Dickey. He was a cool dude, but he's from like a gang called NLR. And he was short, like 5'4", 5'5", but he was probably like 220 pounds, you know?
Right.
And he's just huge dude, you know, bigger than life. And he just finished doing a shoot term for killing some dude in prison, you know? So I'm thinking to myself, man, they put me in with the worst that they could. But he schooled me down. He seen my paperwork. I was concerned about that because the lady was an elderly woman, considered an elderly woman. And I thought that was going to be a problem, coming into prison for killing an older woman. And then in California, that's bad.
Right.
Any prison, that's bad. But California, especially with the politics that they ran. So I'm like, look, dude, here's what happened. I just kind of explained it to him. And he's like, are you some kind of like coward or something, dude? Killing, you know, robbing old people? I'm like, that's not how it was supposed to go down. It was supposed to be, you know, because you're going to have to prove that. I'm like, well, I can get transcripts, more transcripts. He's like, no, out here on the yard. And what does that mean? He's like, we're at war. I said, well, make me a knife. I'll go out there. I mean, like, yeah, let's go, you know? So he did. He showed me how to make knives out of plastic cups and stuff like that, schooled me down. He seen my transcripts, the police report from my dad. I was talking to my dad. And if you just read the police report, it's almost as if I'm talking to the officer.
Right.
You know what I mean? But it says in there that my dad was in the room,
yeah,
and that the officer was listening. But if you just read the transcript and you don't read the heading,
Yeah.
like a lot of people don't read the heading, right? They think it looks like I snitched.
Right.
Right. So
Like you told the cop what you did.
Yeah. So I was concerned with that
Yeah.
coming into level 4 prison, you know. And then back then, there was not really any PC yards, like protect custody yards. There were, but it was only for like high powered gang dropouts or like the Charlie Mansons of the world, where their cases, you know, Sirhan. There had to be some sort of high level notoriety case. It wasn't like, I can't program here, so send me over there. They would just let
Sirhan in California.
Yeah, he still is.
Oh, I didn't.
Yeah,
You know,
he's a Don.
Sirhan is Colby.
I know he is. Let's say he's something to do with a bombing.
No,
Oh, I've heard the name before.
He stabbed.
shot.
Oh, shot. I'm sorry. Is it Robert Kennedy?
Yeah, he shot Robert Kennedy.
Robert Kennedy. Yeah.
During a presidential campaign after John Kennedy got killed.
Yeah, he just won, I think, the Democratic nomination. So he was probably going to be the next president.
Was it?
And he
was this the guy that like got brainwashed?
That's
And,
like
like
they
behind
they
or something.
Yeah, the Manchurian Candidate,
Yeah.
kind of based on where he says he saw a woman in a polka dotted dress, and
Yeah,
super interesting, really.
yeah, yeah. So I never met him, but he, you know, PC yards were for people like that.
Yeah,
You couldn't just go to the cops and say, "Hey, I can't program here."
yeah.
It wasn't even an option. I watched people.
I owe $400 to
Yeah.
Benny. He's gonna stab me.
Dude, they say learn how to suck dick.
Right.
They tell them, you better learn how to suck some dick. Something. You know, I've seen cops tell the guys, a child actor walked up to the cops and said, "Hey, I'm sure I can't be here." And he's looking at him. He's like, "Are you bleeding?" "No, I'll come back when you're bleeding."
Mm.
You know, and that's just the way it was at the time. There was no place for them to go unless they had already been assaulted. And then they would just stick them in the hole for a little while and then put them on another yard. You know,
Start the process all over.
yeah. And it was right on the cusp too, though, because right after that they opened up, not opened it up, but it was open already. But they converted Mule Creek in California, that's a prison out there, to almost primarily PC, right, for those types of people that couldn't program like this, you know, snitches or whatever. After that,
So you got the knife.
yeah, so he shows me how to make the knife, and they end up right after that, like 2 weeks, I think, at two or 3 weeks, I'm trying to remember. I went to committee, and when you go and your orientation, they tell you like, okay, this is how many points you got, this is what level you are, these are the programs you're going to need to take, whether school, education, or whatever. Basically your classification, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I went, but because I wasn't 180 design, because I hadn't had a shoot term yet, they actually moved me off a D facility and put me on B facility, which I was only there for like a week. And we're at war with the blacks there too. The whole prison was at war with the blacks. Whites and blacks were at war. North and South were at war. The only people that weren't at war were like the Asians and like the Asians. I think they were the only ones that weren't at war with somebody, because the Pisces and the Southerners programmed together. So I was like, all right. They sent me over there, moved me in with another dude named Opie, who was also another NLR guy. NLR had at that time had kind of exploded in population. Like they were just recruiting real heavy. And they moved me in with this guy. He says, yeah, we're at war. I'm like, I need a knife. He didn't want me to have a knife because this is like early December and he goes home January 1st. So he's like, man, I'm like, dude, I'm not going out here.
Right.
You know, like that. So I end up getting a knife from another guy. I told him, hey, I want a knife. And he's like, all right, yeah, he's a cool youngster, you know. So I took a knife. He's like, how are you going to get it out to the yard? I'm like, well, I just take it. And they go, dude, they're going to search you, strip you out before you go to yard. So I had to hoop it, you know. If you don't know what that means, you know what that means.
I know what that means.
Yeah, a lot of people don't. I get surprised nobody knows what hooping means.
How long is this knife? How big is this?
It's probably
knife?
like 6 inches, right?
Okay.
Right. Counting the handle, right?
Okay.
So the handle's probably like, it's probably 3-blade free handle, you know? And I was scared to death, but I also was like super focused, if that makes sense. I was like, okay, door's going to open. And this guy next to me, there was a black guy that was in the cell next to me. I was in cell 224. He was in 225. I remember it was 4 block on BR. And he's yelling, and I was playing some music while my cellie was in the shower. And I was working out. And he's like, man, turn your fucking music down. I'm sleeping. I'm like, man, fuck you, you know? why are you yelling at me? You could just ask, right? And he's like, you're a bitch. And when we come out, I'm going to fucking rape you. And, he's just talking shit. And he's a black guy. That's not why he was talking shit, but we were at war. So it's like, that conflict was already there. So, but it seemed like the next day or day after, they ended up moving him out to the gym. And he was one of the blacks that was like, so at the time, the overcrowding was huge. Every cell was full. And so they started filling up the gyms with bunks. And there was these lower level guys living in the gym. Like, we're level 4. These are level 3s. Or level 2s or whatever. But they ended up moving that dude into the gym. I didn't know that's where he went at the time, but I just thought he got moved to another building. So when we came out, the only blacks that were on the yard were the blacks from the gym, and so we were supposed to get like segregated yard, but everybody knew the blacks were coming out from the gym. So I took the knife with me. We were going to get off. That was already a done deal. Everybody knew it. So I went out there, I hooped the knife, went out there, got through the cops, which I didn't think, because I didn't know they were metal detecting, right? So I walked through and I got a metal knife.
Right.
So I'm being stripped out by one officer, and then I see the officer at the end of the line, he's wanding you. And I'm like, I'm fucking screwed. I'm gonna get caught. And this thing's already hanging out, So I'm like, I'm trying to stick it back up there, But what I did was I just took a left. So when you come out of the building, you go line up against the wall and they strip you out. And then you walk down the line and there's a line of officers stripping everybody out. So you walk down that line and you get wanded by the officer. Well, I just took a left and went between two cops that were busy searching other people and just walked out to the yard. And they just didn't even say anything to me. Mostly because I was 19. I looked like a little kid.
Right.
I had no tattoos. I had blonde hair. My hair was real blonde at the time, right? They probably didn't have it. They're like, oh, he's nobody. They probably weren't worried about me too much. But then now I got to get this knife out of me. Like, oh shit, I got to get this knife out. So I go, and this guy, Russ, helps me out. He's like, I'm like, how do I get this out, man? It won't come out, right?
It was this horrible fucking story.
Right? It won't come out. I'm squeezing. I'm like, I kneel down. I'm like, hey, throw block for me from the tower.
Right.
So he can't see me. I kneel down in our area and I'm trying to like push it out. It's not coming out. I'm like, fuck, I'm screwed. I just reached down there and pulled it out.
Right.
Stuck my fingers up in there, grabbed it and pulled it out. Right. I was like, okay, you got to do what you got to do, right? I'm thinking to myself, man, this is a terrible way to start my term.
Yeah.
Right. But whatever. After that, we kind of walked a couple laps and then I seen that black dude. And I'm like, oh, that's that mother,
Mm-hmm.
And I tell Russ, I want to get that dude. I'm going to get that dude. And all the other guys are pumping me up because we're already going to war with these dudes. So we walked around a couple laps. We went to talk to the guys that had the yard. There was a dude named Grumpy. Hey, man. And he goes, well, come on, youngster, handle your business. So I went the next lap and I just ran right into a pile of blacks and just started stabbing them. And then at the same time, all the other whites rushed over.
Is this the same guy that
was on the vent?
Oh, okay.
The one that was talking shit.
That's the guy you stabbed.
Yeah, I ended up running over stabbing him. I only stabbed him like maybe 2 or 3 times. And then he disappeared. Enough. Well, he disappeared. He didn't die.
Oh, okay.
This is 97 still.
Oh,
so he didn't die. He just a few times and then somehow it disappeared, right? Like there's a bunch of gas grenades going off. All of a sudden, these cops appeared on the roofs of the building. Like they were waiting for this to go down with guns, and then they started shooting the live rounds and started killing people, So my very first day on a prison yard, there was this 100 and some odd man riot with the whites and the blacks. 7 whites were shot with the Mini 14. One of them was killed. Some of them, like one guy had his thigh blown out, like they had to replace his whole thigh. It was just a rough day. Everybody was it was bad. We laid on the ground for hours. I'm in handcuffs for hours.
And which one? What prison was it?
High Desert.
Okay.
I was on B yard. That was day after Christmas in 1997, right? So December 26th. And after that, they actually put me and my cellie back in the cell. And we were fine. He went home. And then I ended up moving in with this guy, Russ, right, that had helped me on the yard, throw block and stuff. When I say help me, I didn't mean like, I know the initial reaction was like, wait a minute. No, not like that.
Yeah,
he just threw block for me and kind of encouraged me and gave me like guidance, because he'd been down for a minute.
We interviewed a guy that was from Corcoran. Mm-hmm. He was a guard
Yeah.
who was talking about how the guards were shooting the inmates.
Yeah, I remember that. I missed that part of Cork and Shoe. I've been to Cork and Shoe. I did a lot of time in Cork and Shoe, but that part of it was over by the time I got there. There was still other dirty shit they were doing, but not like they weren't hurting people anymore. They were still under so much scrutiny at that point. Any little tiny, like even with the block gun and non-lethal, they had to do so much paperwork, and the FBI was going through everything and making all the video, and so all that was over by the time I got there. But High Desert was still killing people left and right, and like the officers there. I don't remember how many people got shot up there a lot. So I got shot in the arm in another incident with the Mexicans. It was rough.
So they locked you down.
They locked me down, and then we came out again, and me and Russ stabbed this dude Biker Mike from SAG. I don't remember what his last name was. We just stabbed him. We actually got away with it, or we thought we did. Right? We got back to the cell.
Biker Mike sounds like a white guy.
He's a white guy, but this is a whole totally different incident.
Oh, okay.
So the blacks got locked down. We got locked down, and then we were only programming with the whites. So the whites said, "Hey, this dude's got to go." Right? Well, he's creating conflict.
Right.
Whatever his situation was, I don't even remember why at the time. Just that he had violated some tenet of the Woodpile. Right? So he's got to go. I think he was taking open consumables for blacks. I think that was like the thing, right? We're not allowed to do that.
Right.
No open consumables, no rolled cigarettes, no nothing. It has to be like closed. And so I think it has something to do with that, if I remember correctly. I just know Russ came back in the cell and he's like, "Hey, bro, you want to go with me? I got to get this dude Mike, man." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'll go with you." He goes, "Will you take the knife?" I'm like, "Yeah, fuck it." Right? Russ don't have life, but they're asking him to whack this dude,
Right.
So he's trying to get out of whacking this dude.
Yeah.
So he was asking me.
You already have a license.
Yeah, I got a license. At the time, it's LWAP too. Like, I'm not even going home. Like, there's no chance of me going home. So we come back from chow that day, because even though we were on lockdown, they would walk us to chow and back, just the whites. That's like, just let us all walk. And like, because chow hall was so disconnected, they didn't want to keep bringing the trays to their building, Plus, a lot of stuff gets smuggled out of the kitchen that way, right? So they stopped doing it and started walking us to the chow. So we stabbed them in the rotunda and got away with it. Like, the way the building, like, you have to walk through a rotunda to get to a big day room.
Mm-hmm.
So we stabbed them in there, and we actually I say we got away with it. We didn't get away with it. We just didn't go to the hole for 2 weeks.
Okay.
Right? At the time, we thought we got away with it. We went back to our cells. We were like, okay, I'm covered in blood. He's covered in blood. So we started like slicing up our clothes and flushing it down the toilet, so they couldn't come back. We didn't know if the dude was going to live or die.
Right.
He ended up living. And I don't think he told on us, but a couple weeks later, all of a sudden the officer showed up at our door and was like, "You're going to the hole." So we went back to the hole. When I got to the hole, I thought I was in trouble because I ran into that group of blacks. Like, people afterwards like, "Oh, you should have waited. You didn't go through the proper channels." I'm like, "Well, what are you talking about?" This
we were at war, right?
Yeah, right. But then I got to the hole, and the guy back there in the hole was like, "Nah, man, this kid's just downer than all you guys." He came out of first time on the yard. He's out there poking people.
Right.
So, and he found out later that he was involved in like AB and stuff. So I was like, he was had my back. I was like, all right. So that was like the beginning of the recruiting process. It's like, all right, yeah. I mean, I made an impression on a guy in prison that everybody's trying to make an impression on, at a young age. So I thought that was kind of cool at the time, So I keep saying, but anyway. So I get to, they end up moving us. We didn't stay in the hole very long. They could do these things called captain's hearings, right? A 114D hearing. We went to the hole for what they call an investigation into our involvement in the melee, not in the stabbing of Mike. So once we got there, we went to a captain's hearing. You go to captain's hearing within 10 days, within 4 days, 4 or 5 working days. And then you go to a committee. So I went to the captain's hearing, and they said, "We're going to send you to C Yard. We're not going to leave you back here in ADSEG." They didn't have room. There was wars throughout the prison, and ADSEG was getting full. So they were like, okay, these guys can go. They were even transferring us to other prisons to ADSEG. They just didn't have any room, or they were converting whole buildings into ADSEGs on different yards. So they sent me and Russ to C Yard, where we were still at war with the blacks. Right? It's just everywhere at the time. We got there. Everything was cool. We were on lockdown. I liked lockdown. It was like, I don't have to worry about nothing.
Right.
And so after about I want to say like 9 months over there, we finally came off lockdown, and the war was squashed with the blacks. But while we were on lockdown, a war with the Northerners had come up, like an incident. 2 white dudes, my neighbors, had come out of the cell for work, and they accidentally opened some Northerners' doors, and they attacked the whites. So for no reason, like we had no, at the time, I mean, maybe somebody can enlighten me on the comments, right? But at the time, I couldn't figure out why. I still don't know why. But they attacked these 2 guys. They were supposed to open my door, but they opened the wrong door because we all worked at the kitchen at 4 o'clock in the morning. And so, like, even though we're at war, like the whites and the Southerners work one day, the Northerners and blacks would work another day, and then we'd switch off. This day, it was supposed to be the whites. So they opened the wrong door. That was, High Desert was like that, though. They did it on purpose to see, like, who was getting along and who wasn't. They would just, like, mysteriously, the doors would open up, so you'd come out and fight or stab or whatever. Well, then the 2 Northerners, like, they wouldn't answer any of our questions. They were just like, hey, we just did what we had to do. So once we squashed it with the blacks, we were like, we're going to go back to war with we're just going to go to war with the Northerners. All right. Well, the Southerners were at war. So when we came off lockdown, we asked the Southerners, hey, what are you guys going to do? We want to go with you. Or if you're not going to go, we're going to go. And they said, yeah, we're not going to go. We're going to go to canteen and shit. So the whites were like, fuck it, we're not. And we should just attack the Northerners, right? So I ended up going, I didn't go to the hole that time because they just couldn't take everybody. So they just put us back in our cells. But they transferred me to a different yard. They sent me down to C Lower because C Lower didn't have Northerners. So anybody that they could identify as being part of the issue, they moved them to a yard that didn't have anything to do with Northerners. So then I was down there. That was probably like, I want to say the mid part of like 99. And we've been on lockdown forever. Right after that, we got into the war with Southerners over drugs. Some white dude was supposed to bring in drugs for the Northerners. He did, or for the Southerners, or for the Paisas. I think it was for the Paisas. But anyway, one of these Paisas hit him in the head with a rock, a white dude. So we all went after the Mexicans. And then next thing you know, the Southerners and the Paisas are attacking us. We were on lockdown for a little while. Towards the end of 99, I came out. I want to say it was about November 99. We came off of lockdown. There was 32 whites, 32 Mexicans. And they actually rushed us again. But I ended up catching a homicide on a guy named Carl Koger. He was a white Mexican. He ran with the Mexicans, but he's a white guy. And me and another dude named Tommy went to the hole for his homicide.
Well, how did that happen?
He just attacked us. We had knives. We were ready. Me and Tommy and a couple other guys had brought weapons out. And we were like trying to beg the shot caller to let us stab these dudes. And they're like, no, because the whites on the upper yard had already retaliated on our behalf. And I'm like, yeah, but these dudes are going to stab us.
Right.
And they're like, no, they're not. They already said it was peace. I go, bro, when we walked out here in the yard, this yard was spotless. There wasn't trash. There wasn't toilet paper. There wasn't plastic. So look around. There's cellophane and toilet paper just floating across the yard. Like people had unwrapped their weapons.
Right.
And they didn't like keep the material in their pocket that they wrapped it with. They just threw it on the ground. Well, now as the wind was blowing and it's floating across you see it, toilet paper and cellophane. Those are what you wrap your weapons with before you hoop them. Yeah. So I'm like, look, dude, this is going to happen. No, we gave them our word. We have to do this. So I was like, this dude named Eddie Lovett is the one I was talking to. And I said, Eddie, if they rush us, I'm whacking you. I'm not going to sit over here and be a victim.
Right.
And he goes, if they rush us, he goes, if they rush us, he goes, I'll let you whack me. I'm like, all right. This month, I was pissed. By then I started getting a big head. I started getting into the prison life, right? So then, sure enough, like towards the end of what would have been yard recall, they came rushing us. And afterwards, I remember we were laying on the ground and I looked at Eddie and I said, I'll be back.
So you're laying on the ground.
Afterwards. So when they rushed us, this guy came, I didn't know who he was at the time. It was just like a melee of people. There was gas grenades going off. And I just grabbed a hold of the first Mexican that I could grab a hold of. And I just started stabbing him. We fell to the ground. And then Tommy, this other dude another Tommy came over, see me on the ground with him. Actually, he was on top of me. And I was trying to stab him from below. And then Tommy, I don't know how he got him off of me, but he got him off of me. And then he was stabbing him, and then we were stabbing him together. And then after they started shooting the Mini 14, we all scattered.
Right.
And we laid down. I just so happened to lay real close to Eddie, not on purpose. Just how it ended up. And I looked at him and said, I'll be back. I knew I was going to the hole.
Yeah.
I didn't know the guy was dead because he didn't die until like later that night, but he was over there. But I knew I was going to the hole. So we go to the
What did Eddie say?
He was stunned. He didn't really say a whole lot. He was just like, you handled your business, youngster. You handled your business, And I'm like, well, I'll be back. Right. And he's like, all right. He didn't really have much to say.
Mm-hmm.
So they put us in handcuffs and they put us all on a yard together. Like all the whites on one yard, all the Southerners on another yard. Like the 180 yards have these concrete yards connected to them. They're like shoe yards. And so they put us all on those. So on either side of the building, on one side, on C section side or A section side, depending on which building you're in, there's a little concrete area that's walled in. There's a shower out there, there's a toilet out there, and then there's a space for recreation, like handball or whatever, right? But that's usually where they put, like, at the time, like C status. C status was like a disciplinary thing. Or if they were using the building as an ad seg, that's where you got recreation at, was on this little concrete, we called it a concrete yard. So they put us on that concrete yard. And Eddie wouldn't talk to me, right? But he sent his cellie over, this dude named, I called him Johnny Dillinger, right? And he was a bank robber. His name was John Lerner. He's cool as hell. But he'd come over, he goes, youngster, man, you got to let that go. I said, I'll let it go. But then I remember the cops came and said, you pouring metal, both Tommies, like, come here. And they took us straight to the hole, And then the rest, some followed, some didn't, But we were attacked, right? And I'm sitting there thinking that, I didn't know that dude died I didn't find out dude died until I got to the hole. Say, hey, by the way, you're in ad seg for murder. I'm like, who died?
Right.
And then I seen the thing that said for the death of inmate Colgrove, right? So I'm like, okay, whatever. It is what it is, I mean, I'm like in prison. I'm already doing life.
Right.
And I'm thinking at the time that this is going to give me status. People are going to stop fucking. They weren't fucking with me anyway, but nobody's going to ever fuck with you. You're only good as your last hit, right? In prison, period. So, and especially in level 4, 180 yard. If you're in the game, you're only as good as your last hit.
Right.
If that memory starts to fade, you got to do something else.
Right.
People start, oh man, that was a long time ago. As soon as somebody says that was a long time ago, it's time for you to put in work. So we end up in ad seg for the death of Colgrove. We go to, so it's kind of like a trial, a hearing. You have a lieutenant's hearing, like RVR, 115 hearing, right? I didn't postpone mine because I'm thinking, who gives a shit, right? Tommy postponed his for the outcome of the DA referral. So anytime you get like a felony in prison, they send a thing to the DA called DA referral. Tommy he postpones his. I don't. And I go there and I get found not guilty of the murder.
All right.
I get found guilty of participation in a melee. That's only a 90-day shoe. So I sat in the hole for 50 days, 60 days. They sent me back to the yard. Right back to the same yard I just left. And I'm right into the same building with Eddie Lovett.
Right.
And he just looked at me. He's like, really, youngster? I'm like, hey. I said, we got to talk. So we came off lockdown without the Southerners. And me and this other guy, Josh, sliced him up. They were razors. I couldn't get to a weapon fast enough because I literally got to the yard and 2 days later I was out on, and I could make one out of plastic, but I didn't think it was going to be good enough. I wanted something that really was going to make a statement, and I was pissed, because I was thinking, man, you're going to put us in a trick bag over drugs.
Right.
Because I knew Eddie. Eddie was a dope fiend, but he happened to have the yard, right? He was one of the mouthpieces for the yard. So he's a dope fiend. And I'm thinking, man, I'm being put in a trick bag over drugs. These dudes are going to attack us because you want to get one. You want to get visits, things like that, right? So me and Josh went out there with razors and just started slicing them up. First time we went out there, him and another dude named Teardrop, another guy that had the yard with him. They were kind of like, they're both homeboys. They're from Sacramento, a gang called Sacramaniacs. So yeah,
These names.
yeah. So we sliced them dudes up. We went to the hole for that. And I ended up getting found not guilty for the battery with the weapon. I got found guilty with just battery. They said that he didn't need stitches in one report. And in another report, it said refused medical treatment, refused the stitches. So I used the one that said, I said superficial. He didn't need stitches.
Right.
And I remember the AWs, his name was Malfi. He's like, man, this fucking idiot's right. And he brought me back 2 weeks later, dropped the battery with the weapon and sent me back out to the same yard. Yeah. So I ended up stabbing another Mexican guy because we're still at war. We ended up going back to ADSEG and then sent me to a different facility at that point, you know.
What was the facility?
A D facility, same prison.
Oh,
I was in the same prison for 8 years, you know, and it was the first 8 years, it was just rock and roll. But that DR was programming. There was no wars. This is the first time I got programmed since, like, really got some programs since I came to prison.
So but at some point you get the life taken off.
So yeah, at the time I was still going, I wasn't going to court yet because they hadn't picked it up on Tommy. Tommy's still sitting in ADSEG waiting for them to pick that up.
All right.
Because he hasn't had his 115 heard. You can postpone your 115. So I went to court probably like in, I want to say 2001, I started going to court for the murder that happened in 99. And when I went to court for that, I just pled guilty as soon as I walked in.
Right.
I went like, look, I don't want to keep coming back to court. What do I need to do? The lawyer's like, you can just plead guilty. He goes, I'll advise it though. I'm like, yeah, that's your job.
Right.
My job is like, I'm doing life without who gives a shit. I don't want to have to keep coming back and forth to court. You know, it's a pain in the ass, disrupts my program. There's nothing going on. So he's like, all right. So he talked to the judge and the DA. They brought me back to court 2 more times, and then they gave me an additional 25 life. I shouldn't have done that. Tommy beat his. He ended up getting found not guilty in court. You know, I could probably have done the same thing because it was a Mayday. We were the ones that got attacked, right? But I didn't think about that at the time. Who gives a shit? You know, I'm doing life already. So I end up in 2003 being involved with another homicide with another white guy.
Well, I'm talking about the home invasion.
So I'm going back to that.
Oh.
So in 2003, I get the homicide on another guy in prison. And while I'm going to court for that, I'm in ADSEG going to court for that, I go back to court. They call me back to court randomly. Like, I knew I had an appeal in, but I hadn't really heard much about it. Like, I had like a questionnaire from my lawyer, and then I had got some papers from saying that the briefs had been filed. But I had got the brief too, but I didn't really read it that much, and I didn't know much about the law at the time.
Right.
So what I did was I just kind of threw it in my box. I used it as weights. You know, I would make copies of all my 115s and stuff, as many as I can when I was in ADSEG, and I'd use them as bundles for weights, you know?
Right.
I really didn't give a shit. And then one day, Traughber, you're going to court. I'm like, I know, I'm going to court. What do you mean? And they're like, no, you're going back to your county. I'm like, why didn't they take me all the way back to county jail? I didn't know what it was about. And I got there and they said, oh, they had worded something wrong in the thing. It was just like a stupid procedure. I guess the appeals court ruled that there was a right that needed to be waived that I didn't waive. And I'm like, and it was some stupid right. And it wasn't even to an appeal. It was to something else. And then another thing about restitution. That was it. But then the judge is like, I'm not giving this kid LWOP anymore.
Right.
It just doesn't make any sense to me. So the DA fought it for a long time. She was pissed. And then came back in one day, like a year later. I'd been going back and forth to court. A year later, she comes in and she says, I'm trying to remember the exact wording. She says, Your Honor, we rescind or whatever our appeal, however she said it. And we're going to go ahead and agree with, you can do whatever you want. And he asked her, why? What changed? Oh, we just found out he has 2 additional life sentences.
Right.
He's never getting out anyway, right? And the family's okay with that. So it was over, you know.
What did he give you?
26 to life. Same as I got my co-defendant got.
Right.
So he's like, I'm not going to give him more time than his co-defendant got. That's his whole big thing.
Yeah.
The guy that did the murder got less time than the guy that, you know, just happened to go to trial.
Right.
You know, so I went back but it didn't change how I ran my program in prison. At that point, I'm already going to trial for a whole nother. I didn't even go to trial. I just went to court a lot because after Tommy beat his, I was like, man, I could beat this one, you know?
Right.
I didn't beat it. So I didn't go to trial either, though. Towards the end, it was like apparent that I wasn't going to beat it. It was like I had like 75 people telling on me, you know, this is supposed to be a gangster yard,
right?
You know, but there's people telling on you, you know.
Are you, I mean, how many years is it?
At that time?
Yeah.
7.
But you do have the potential to get paroled at
now
25, right?
Not anymore. So once I picked up the second life term, and now I had an LWOP. There was no potential to be paroled.
Right.
But once
that got knocked off. Yeah.
Yeah, but I had already committed another life sentence. I already got another life sentence.
But that didn't have parole?
No, 46 to life. No.
Oh.
Right. So I'm thinking I'm never getting, and at the time, remember California, nobody was going home.
Mm-hmm.
Governor Gray Davis had got on TV, if you're convicted of a murder in California, you're not getting paroled, period. And there was guys on the yard with 7 to life that had been down 40 years. So I'm thinking, man, I ain't never getting out of this it's not happening. So at the end of it, I end up getting found guilty and then shipped down to Corcoran Shoe. There's a lot of stuff that happened in between, but I went down to Corcoran. I got down there. At the time that I committed the second homicide that I was found guilty on, or the third one, excuse me, the second one in prison. Once I was involved in that, I'd already been a shot caller for the yard. I'd been recruited to be part of, prison gangs, things like that. So I got down to Corcoran, and it was just like home. That's where everybody was at. Validated gang members go to the shoe. They don't ever get out. Like, I don't know if you remember, like, California indeterminate policy back in the days, but if you were a validated gang member, you never got out. There was only 3 ways out of the shoe. It was parole, die, or debrief. And if you weren't going to debrief and you had life, you were never getting out. Guys have been back there for 30, 40 years, So I'm thinking that's going to be my fate, at this point. Right. However, they changed validation process. So one of the guys that was part of our organization was fighting the validation for me, because I didn't know anything about legal law. I didn't go to the law library unless it was to pass kites or do something of that nature. Well, this guy ended up 602ing and appealing my validation and winning. It was only based on confidential information. It wasn't based on any kind of like evidence other than just people telling on me.
Right.
And so I ended up getting kicked out of the shoe on what they called, they made a deal. I would get kicked back out of the shoe once my shoe was up for the murder on inactive status. Right. I'm an inactive gang member is what they were saying. Right. Okay. So I got kicked off to Kern Valley, but with directives, you're going to go out there and this is what you're going to do. You're going to handle your business, but you're going to stop all the wars because we're not getting any money.
Right.
You can't make any money on lockdown. So you're going to start making money. You're going to do whatever you can to start making money, even if that meant extortion, even if that meant like, we start instituting a policy where like every building had to come up with a certain amount of cash every quarter that we would send to AdSeg or to the shoe, specifically to shoe. We had like different organizations or different PO boxes or different people that we worked with. Kern Valley shut down. I was working before it shut down, there was this lady. So I was in the SAP program there. I got into the SAP program because there was this lady in there that I knew I can pull her. Right. She wasn't pretty. I hate to say that too, man. I feel like such a dick, but she was ugly as hell. Right. But she liked me.
Right.
Right. I was, I'm fat now. I'm gaining weight since I got out of prison, but I had long hair. I was in really good shape. And she was just staring at me all the time. And I was like, dang, I could get that. Right. And I wasn't thinking about having sex with her as much as I was like, I could get her to bring me whatever I want.
Right.
And so I joined the SAP program, the substance abuse program. I don't use drugs.
Right.
So I go into the SAP program. They're talking all this 12-step. I'm like, I don't know what the hell they're talking about. But all I want to do is talk to Tracy. So eventually she comes to me and she says, hey, man, I'm having this issue with this black dude. He keeps trying to touch my ass. Right. And at the time I'm thinking, well, why don't you tell on her?
Yeah.
Right.
You're
a staff. Yeah. He's not a cop. Oh, she's a staff. Right. But she's not a cop. She works for the prison.
Yeah.
But she's not a CO. She's a counselor, a substance abuse counselor. So I'm like, why are you telling me? Of all people. She goes, well, can you get him to stop? I'm like, no, I can't. Right. She goes, yeah, but I'm white. Right. I know you have the key. Yeah. I'm like, yeah. I go, okay. She goes, I know you have the keys for the whites here. I'm like, okay. Even if that were true, which I'm not admitting to anything, he's black. I can't do anything about it. She was, but I'm white. I'm like, you are white. I said, let me tell you this. I said, I'm going to tell you this how it works. If you were doing something for us, then you would fall under the umbrella of protection. Then I can do something for you. But you're not doing anything for us. You're nice. You look out for us. You give us pens and paper and things that, extras.
Right.
But they're not illegal.
Yeah.
Right. They're not stuff that I can go out on the yard and make money on. Right. So I can't help you. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I said, I can go talk to the guy and see if I can get him to stop, just like, because I knew the guy.
Yeah.
But I'm not, it's not, there's no force behind it. There's no way for me to do it. And she's like, what if I start doing something for you guys? I'm like what? I said, it has to be significant. She goes, let me think about it. So she came back a couple of days later and she had me a bunch of books of stamps. I'm like, what's these for? And she's all, well, I'm doing something for you guys. I said, I can get these sent to the mail. I don't need stamps. I got 1,000 of them. You know, she's like, well, that's still doing something for you guys. I said, no. I said, you got to do something different. It has to be something we can't get.
Right.
She goes, like what? And I'm like cigarettes, for example. We were no longer getting cigarettes in prison. I said, you bring me 1 pouch of Bugler and I can get this dude to stop. 1. That's it. She said, all right. So next day she brought me a pouch of Bugler, you know? So I went straight to the blacks, this guy that I knew, not the guy that was doing it,
Yeah.
but one of his guys. I said, hey, Shady, it's got to stop.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, man, I can't tell that brother not to fuck with her. You know, I can't. I go, bro, it's got to stop. So what I did was I lied. I said, look, man, her old man is one of our big homies. He's telling me that if I don't get this to stop, we got to whack all you guys back here. I'm just trying to keep the peace, brother. I mean, we do a lot of business together, right? I said, you know, we have a ton of knives back here. I don't want it to go there. But her old man is telling us I got to get it stopped or it's over. And he's like, let me talk to him. So we went and talked to him and told him to leave her alone. But he didn't right away.
Mm-hmm.
I said, it's going to be an issue. So once they found out he was still trying to do it, they got, because he was like writing her notes. And then she'd bring me the notes. So I gave them to him. I'm like, look, dude, it's got to stop.
Right.
And then he's like, okay. So they beat him up, you know, not back there in the SAP program, because there's no gun coverage back there.
Yeah.
Like getting stabbed back there is over for you. There's there's not even any COs back there. There's some in the work change, but in the actual building, there's none. One of the staff would have to hit their alarms. One of the substance abuse counselors would have to hit their alarm and then wait for the staff to get there.
Yeah.
You know, it takes forever. You know, so they were worried about it. So they were like, okay. When he went out the yard later that day, they beat him up and then told him he can't go back there. And he's not even allowed to go back there anymore. If he does, they're just going to keep jumping on him. So he stopped going back, which was great. But then she was super grateful. She's like, oh my God. Well, I asked her one day, I said, why didn't you just call the cops on him? Write him up. And she's all, I didn't want to be a snitch. I'm like, you're not a snitch. You're not in prison.
Right.
You know, what are you talking about? She goes, oh, you know, but I think she got off on it.
Yeah.
Right. Like I did something for her. I did, you know, power. Right. She came to me for a reason. Somebody obviously told her I was the guy that had the yard. So then after that, she became a workhorse. I mean, she was just like anything I wanted, I got. I mean, I'm talking like anything. And I think
she's bringing in drugs, or is this just?
Well, she wouldn't bring in drugs right away. Just what we did was we were opening the chargers on the phones and packing it full of dope and then putting it back together. We didn't need the chargers. We had these adapters.
Yeah. Right.
That we use for our CD players that charge the phones.
Ask her to bring in, hey, he needs a charger. And
well,
she has just realized that.
We should say phones. I'm going to pack some phones together. I'm going to deliver them to you.
Right.
And then you're going to bring them in. She's like, all right. She
has
didn't
no
know
idea.
No idea the drugs are in there. Yeah. You know, unfortunately, right? She has no, I mean, I feel bad about it now, like thinking back how, and I say that, and I legitimately, I think back about how much potentially it could have destroyed her life.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like her kids, she had kids. She was a single mom, you know, those things, right? I didn't even think about it, but I didn't give a fuck. But now I look back on it and I think to myself, man, I'm about to be a father myself, right? In about 5 weeks. And I think about like, man, dude, for somebody to do something to me, unbeknownst to me, that puts me in jeopardy of losing my family, you know, I'd be pissed, you know? So by the time I think about it, I didn't even care. It never even crossed my mind. My only concern was I kept my word to her. You know, that was like my only concern, is that I would keep my word to her, that I'd keep her protected. I wouldn't do anything to put her in jeopardy other than bring shit in, right? And it worked for a long time. And then, I mean, cell phone, I don't know how familiar, remember the MyTouch, the T-Mobile MyTouch, when it first came out? It was like one of the first time the iPhone came out. You know, this is how long ago.
Locked out.
Yeah, it's how long ago.
I didn't see an iPhone until I got out of prison.
When'd you get out?
In 2019.
Oh, okay. So
and I went
way into it.
Yeah, I went in and 2006.
So yeah,
So they didn't come out, 2007 or 8.
yeah. So I in like 2007 or 8 is when I got the My Touch. It looked like an iPhone. I actually thought it was an iPhone, but it wasn't. It was like a My Touch thing, right? Man, I was stoked. I didn't even know how to turn it on, but I was stoked, right? Lost that motherfucker the next day. Got raided, because this dude from Hazard, or not, he's not from Hazard. His name was Hazard. Forget his real name. I wish I knew his real name. He had PC'd up. He went to the cops and told him that I was having an affair with the lady in the program, or in the SAP program.
But you weren't.
I was.
Okay.
Yeah. I was. I mean, she was bringing me shit.
Yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah. We ended up,
Yeah.
that's why I said she's ugly as hell.
Right.
Right. But I'm like, I've been in prison at the time with nothing, I don't know how many years. I think it had been like 15 years already. So I'm like, anything, any storm, any port in a storm, right?
It
So
was a Real World 2 and a prison 8.5 or something.
yeah, right. A Real Warrior 2, my right. Lucky. I mean, I hate to say, I liked her though. She was cool people. Don't get me wrong. We had long conversations. We talked. I got to know her. We talked on our cell phone all the time. I got to know her really well, and I was like, man, if she was prettier, she'd be cool.
Right.
You have to be attracted to the woman.
Yeah.
You have to be, right? But at the time I didn't have to be. I was like, man, I didn't give a fuck, So, it turned, so he tells her we're having this affair and she's bringing me all this shit. And I ended up borrowing my friend's phone that a guy had brought one in for. And I called her. I said, look, don't bring that shit. This is Sunday. So don't bring that shit on Monday. And the program's about to end. There's no more SAP program. They only got one more week left and they're shutting the program down because they lost funding. So she's not going to be working there anyway. So I'm like, don't bring that shit on Monday. And I mean, the last month that we were in the SAP program, dude, we were backpacks full of shit. Whatever she can fit in her lunchbox, packed to the gills because they didn't search her. We were bringing back, So we knew. And we were charging this Indian guy. He was from, I can't remember his from right now. I remember the name of it. I'll remember in a minute. Anyway, down by India. It's a big ass tribe, Morongo tribe, right? He's from this big ass tribe. He got like $30,000-$40,000 a month from his tribe. Mm-hmm. And he was paying us to bring him stuff. Just whatever. I mean, knick-knack shit too, like jacks. Remember jacks? Like the game with the ball and the little thing?
Yeah.
He wanted a pack of jacks. I don't know why, but he's like, can you bring me some jacks? He'd give us a list. And then he'd give us the money to buy the stuff, but also $5,000 traveling fee. And then the other half of the box would be mine, whatever I could put in there. And not only did I get it for free, but he would pay for all the stuff that I wanted too.
Right.
Because he's doing life sentences, he's getting $30,000 a month.
Yeah. I don't know if people realize that if you're an Indian with if you're an Indian and you're a part of certain tribes, you actually get paid. Like I actually did a mortgage for an Indian that was making $80,000 or $90,000 a year. And this was 30 years ago. But like if you're, the Seminole Casino, right?
Yeah.
If you're with the Seminole Casino, these guys are making tons of money. They're making what, 20, 30,000. There's places up north where they have casinos and they're making 30, 40, $50,000 a month. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah, that's what this guy, he used to take his checks from the casino because they'd give them to him after they were cashed onto his books, by the way. And he would paste them onto his wall and then cover them in floor wax. So they were like waxed into his wall. And he would just had rows of them. I went in his cell one time, and he would just keep black, right?
All right.
He would keep it in a spoon right there on his desk. He didn't give a shit if he got caught. They would just write him up. He didn't really care. They never took him to the hole. And because they knew it wasn't for sales. And back then, if they could say that it was for sales, they would take you to the hole. But if it's just personal use, they just write you up for possession. He'd just leave it there. He didn't care. I don't give a shit. What are they going to do to me?
He got like a life sentence?
He had a life sentence, yeah. And his name was Boogie. Man, he was cool though. But he would and then when I remember the last list he gave me, I could have told him it's the last run, bro. So get whatever you need.
Right.
Get it and get as much of it as you can.
Yeah.
Get as much of it as you can, right? And he said, all right. So he gives me this list, and on the list is a penis pump. I'm like, what do you need a fucking penis pump for, bro? He's like, just get it for me.
Right.
I'm like, no, I'm not getting caught bringing that across the yard.
It's just not a good look.
No, I'm fucking screwed, right? And he's like, man, I'm paying you. I'm like, you ain't paying me enough. You know, I said, look, bro, I'm gonna run it down to you. I understand. So the Native Americans used to program with the whites for a lot of years. For my first 10 or so years in prison, they were living with us. They programmed with us. So, and he'd been down that long, so he knew. I said, look, bro, you know what time it is. If I got caught walking across the yard with all this stuff, the penis pump is the only thing I get whacked over.
Mm-hmm.
You know, why don't I need a penis pump with a celly? So he's like, all right, well, just put something else in there instead. Put extra this or whatever. So we did do that for him. But that Monday, I was telling her, don't bring nothing. And they arrested her in the parking lot.
They arrested her, but she had nothing.
She had nothing. But
Okay.
they searched her vehicle. They searched her house, you know. And when they got to her house, there was packages of stuff there,
Mm.
you know, but no drugs.
Right.
Right. Thank God, no drugs. She was, at that time, she didn't care about the drugs. She was starting to bring them in.
Yeah.
In the beginning, we were packing them in the things, you
Yeah,
know. But at that time, she didn't give a shit because she's trying to make as much money as she can before she gets laid off. And so I was like, man, of course I convinced her, you know, yeah, babe, you know, this is a good way for you to you can make enough money and live off for a couple of years, you know, that's, you know, things like that, right? It didn't work out that way, but she got caught and she didn't get caught with the drugs. Thank God when I called her and I told her, I said, look, I don't know what you're going to do with the stuff, but get rid of the drugs, hide them somewhere. You know, don't leave them in your house. Because I knew they had raided other people's houses. So I was like, people like ladies that brought stuff in from visiting, like,
Right.
I knew they raided their houses too. So,
But all this is based on one guy's word. Like, so what? She didn't get. They raided the house, but so what? So you have some.
they
stuff?
got my phone.
Okay.
So when he left, they raided my house and they got my phone. And in that phone was her phone number.
Right.
You know, and our text message conversations and stuff. I didn't know how text messages worked.
Yeah.
Back then, that they're there forever.
Yeah.
Right. I would delete them and think they're gone. They're not.
They're not gone.
Yeah. Right. So I was ignorant to that. So
They're gone if your girlfriend checks your phone.
yeah.
They look hard.
Yeah.
If the
Yeah, for T-Mobile,
Yeah.
it is contact T-Mobile and said, hey, man.
they print
Yeah.
out of this guy all the text
Yeah.
between these.
And then there
phone
was
numbers.
pictures, too, of the stuff
Oh,
on the phone, you know, like, so when the stuff got delivered, she would send me a picture so that I can, you know, confirm to other people that, hey, your stuff has been delivered. It'll be brought in this week at this time. I never give them a day and time, but it'd be, hey, I'll get your stuff this week, you know. Those were on the phone. So, and they coming from her phone number. So they end up raiding her house. They didn't find any drugs, thank God. So she didn't actually get arrested. She got arrested, but let go. But,
Right.
and they told her, you're welcome to go back to the prison. Like, we can't bust you for anything. What, you had 20 cell phones at your house?
Right.
Can't bust you for anything. You know, you can go back, but she never did.
Yeah.
She took disability. You know, she filed like disability leave, said that she was under mental distress, that she didn't like getting raided. It triggered her anxiety or whatever. She never came back. But then she put in to visit me. You know, and they denied her. They denied her quick, you know. I was like, those are probably because California, you got to fill out this paperwork and they send it in.
Yeah.
And they pull it from the mail. You never even see it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And usually
It's
it
the
takes,
same thing that.
yeah. So it usually takes a month or two and you hear something back, you know, denied or approved. And I got the paper that she was denied in a week. You know,
Right.
like, I mean, it was fast. I was just like, they didn't even look at it. They just seen her name. I was like, hell no.
Oh, your boo was gone.
Your
That's
boo's
upset.
gone. Yeah. But then I was
Sad.
like, shit, now I got to find another one. You know, because she's doing me no good now.
Yeah.
Right. And that's fucked up. But I mean, like, that's how I was thinking. You're nothing for
Yeah.
me anymore but a freaking rock.
Right.
You know, you're dragging me down. You know, so I moved on quick, you know. And then they end up transferring me though. So they sent me to Salinas Valley, and Salinas Valley turned into a whole nother game.
What's it called?
Salinas Valley State Prison.
Salinas fault. Okay.
So Salinas Valley turned in, I mean, that was probably the biggest corrupt prison at the time. I mean, as far as like, if you wanted anything, you could get it at Salinas Valley. Anything. You know, Kern Valley was bad, but Salinas Valley made it look like a cakewalk as far as drugs, phones. I mean, if it was a new phone that came out, I had it in my cell in 10 days. It'd be on the screen and it says it's out tomorrow. I'd be in my cell in 10 days. You know, for somebody on the yard, not just sell them. I didn't really care for the phones were cool, but they were great for communication. And yeah, I got to learn stuff and play on the internet and go on Facebook and all this stuff. But those were all traps, you know.
Right.
You get caught on Facebook, you get your house raided,
Mhm.
you know, and you get written up, you know, all this. I didn't care about the write-ups. I had so many points that like I couldn't go to any lower thing anyway. So I think when I paroled, I had 44 write-ups already and like 111 points when I paroled. And in California, like anything 59 and up or up over 59 is level 4. And that's the highest level you can go anyway. And you only lose for a long time. You only lose like 6 or 8 a year. So, and I was over 200, well over 200, 300 or somewhere like that. And then they changed it and they go, oh, we're going to take 12 off. I was clean 9 years, no write-ups. I still paroled with 111 points. It was 12 a year, so I was well over. I don't even remember. I never even counted. I never even paid any attention to it until the day that I paroled. The guy at the desk was like, you're paroling with 111 points. I'm like, yeah. And he's like, that's a lot of fucking points.
How do you get, I mean, you still have like life plus.
Oh, so we can get to the parole board. Salinas Valley, we'll get to that later, but so years later.
No, we can do something. Right. Talk, yeah.
Salinas so I got to Salinas in 2010. And I was, at the highest peak of my gang membership, like all that stuff. And as soon as I got there, a guy came to my door, handed me a cell phone, drugs, a roll call, like for the yard, who was all on the yard, and said, hey, the yard's yours. I'm like, no, man, just go ahead. He's like, no, it's yours. His name was Cowboy. He's from San Diego. He goes, look, Tommy, I already know who you are. I know what you're about. He goes, I don't want the yard. It's yours. I'm like, all right. I'm not going to argue with him anymore. But he came to my door and he's like, look, like later on, he goes, I already know how you operate, so I'm going to take the next mission. I'm gone. So whoever needs to get stabbed, I'll do it. And then I'll leave. I'm like, you don't have to leave, bro. You're good. And he goes, no. He goes, look, man. He goes, I know how you operate. You sit here. You wait for somebody to fuck up. You don't come. You show up on a yard. You lay back and you wait for the dude that has the yard to fuck up, and then you have him stabbed. So then you take power. It's like a power move.
Right.
And he said, I'm not doing that. Right. Yeah. So here, you can have it.
I'd rather leave.
Yeah. I'd rather leave on my feet than on my back. Right. So he's like, all right. I'm like, cool. All right. That's gangster.
Yeah.
Then he PC'd up. Like literally like a week later. And I found out why. Is he owed a ton of money.
Okay.
And that's why he was like, here, go ahead and take the yard.
Yeah.
And that was the big thing with prison politics in California, or for the whites, is a lot of times the whites that are the shot callers are dope fiends. And so like when a white guy brings in drugs, for example, brings, say, 25 grams of something, right? I get a third, right? Just for being the shot caller, right? That third buys you protection, meaning that you can sell your dope on the yard freely to whoever you wish. And if you don't get paid, I'll make sure you get paid. Meaning I'll go to the Southerners, I'll go to the other races,
right,
and make sure that they either take care of that dude so he gets stabbed or they pay it. If you don't pay me the third, you don't get the protection. And you're also not allowed to sell your dope. If it's for personal use, then it's for personal use. It's not for personal use plus canteen, plus a little extra money, plus a re-up. It's for personal use. So Salinas Valley was like one of those places where tons of people were bringing in drugs, but shot callers got into the habit of using. So my job was to take the third, sell 2/3 of it, and send that money. And then the third of the dope was mine to do with as I wish. Right. So I didn't use, but for other people they did. So the shot callers would often use that dope and then develop a bad habit, heroin, or, get dope sick.
Yeah.
So they would start using, and now that third became like half. And then that half became 3/4. And eventually they weren't sending anything.
Right.
And then the guys in the back are like, hey, that dude's got to go. The guys in the shoe that were on the shelf or whatever, they're like, these dudes got to go. What happened? Nobody's bringing anything in anymore. Well,
it's just not getting past
it's just not going past the shot caller, whoever happened to be the key holder at the time. So what I used to do is I get to a facility. So a yard and a facility, same thing, right? I get to the yard and I'd lay back, think, okay, you're the shot caller. Cool. Let's see how you work. Because if I didn't have to do the work, I was cool with that.
Mm-hmm.
Less trouble for me, less bullshit from the cops, less heat. I didn't want to always have to do it. So if one guy was there and he was doing a good job, I left him there. He just had to report to me, like everything he sent, so that I can report that, hey, this got sent to this person at this time. Because we didn't always work for the same people. Like there would be like one guy, I'd work for 2 or 3 different people. He might be working for a couple different dudes from the same gang, but just different people.
Right.
So I just say, hey, at this time, he said he sent X amount to this person. So make sure you're clear, because then they would divvy it up or try to. They didn't. You know how they were. Or you might not, but there was infighting always with the organizations, right? From the outside looking in, you think they're all united. But then once you get in, you realize you have to build coalitions within your organization.
Right.
If you don't, you're just being used constantly. So we were building, and then once, like when I got kicked out to the main line, my coalition is who I dealt with. And then I would send them the money, and then they would disperse it as they saw fit. Some people got some didn't, just the way they decided to do it, but it protected me, because now I have a whole blanket of protection of guys that are getting paid.
Right.
So in this situation, I would just wait for somebody to fuck up and then have them removed, and then
step in
and say, all right, you couldn't do it, so I'm doing it, and I wasn't always like, I always put like somebody else in place in front of me. I would always go, okay, you're a good dude. I know you don't use. I need you to run day-to-day operations. Let me deal with the higher ups. You deal with the day-to-day. You're the one's going to collect the money. You're the one that's going to divvy up the drugs to each building. Because I started getting cell phones and giving them to every building. I said, okay, rent that out for $50 for 12 hours, and then give me the money. And then you guys can keep 2 days to yourself. Just pick 2 days, but not on the weekend. Because the weekend was when everybody wanted to use the phones, right? So on the weekends, pick 2 days, and your whole building, all the whites in your building get to use the phone. But not on the weekends. Those were right. So every 12 hours, you move it from one cell to the next. And usually it's the same 4 or 5 guys using the phone. They're like, might pay for 12 hours today and 12 hours tomorrow and 12 hours the next day. And they would pay $50, Their girlfriends would pay.
I was going to say, these people, their families are being drained.
Yeah. And a lot of times it was blacks, right? And they would have 5 or 6 different girls that they would be talking to, that they met on like Plenty of Fish or some freaking dating website, and these girls would be sending money, like money. I'm like, damn, all right. I don't really care. As long as I'm getting it, you're paying. I don't really care. At the time, green dots were prevalent in prison, right? So everything was paid in green dots. And I remember it got to a point where I had a whole list of green dots I couldn't load. Because you can only load so many a day. I was just sitting there like waiting for that 12-hour mark or that 24-hour mark to where I could go, okay. Otherwise, people would take your green dot, give it to you, and then go give it to somebody else too. So you had to try to get this shit like,
right.
I remember I had a list of like credit card numbers. They looked like credit card numbers, but what they were green dot numbers, because I had to call, type in the number, type in the passcode, do all that stuff, and then type in the other number. And I'm doing it on a flip phone. I didn't really care. At the time, smartphones were like, they were nice, but they're inconvenient. They're hard to hide. You can't hoop them. Some of the smaller flip phones, you could, just hoop. But, sometimes you had to.
Right.
Sometimes you get in those situations where, or they didn't fit in the toilet. Like the smartphones didn't fit in the toilet.
Yeah.
So just flip phones, you could put them in plastic and wrap them in rubber gloves or whatever, and then flush them down the toilet with a string. We used to cut the Folgers jars. So the fat part of the Folgers jars, we'd cut it out. And so you had a circle, and then you cut that circle. And the plastic's very hard to bend. But we'd bend it and then shove it down into the toilet with a string tied to it. And then have the string to the phone. And you flush it. And then when that thing opened up, you could still use the restroom. So it would be hanging down
right
into the pipe, but you could still use the restroom. Not sit down and use the restroom, obviously, right?
Right.
Not take a shit, but you could still piss in it. And then when the cops came in and they flushed your toilet, it didn't back up.
Yeah.
Right? It wasn't like it was clogged,
And you just reach down, grab the ring, and just pull it back.
Pull the ring out and then pull everything out. So we did that. That was a cool little spot for a while.
Kobe's just like,
but you've been there, so you never had to do it.
Yeah, and I never messed with phones. Like there would always be like a guy or two that would have a phone and then say, if you need to use a phone. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I got enough
remember-
problems.
Yeah, I remember when I listened to a lot of your story. Your story was about getting out.
Yeah.
You're from the day you walked into prison, you're like, how the hell am I going to make my time shorter and not longer?
And how, yeah.
So I went through Salinas Valley. Well, somewhere like 2012, 2013, the laws started changing in California, right? On how juveniles were affected by parole process. Like if you went to prison as a juvenile, like I was 17 when I initially caught my case.
Yeah.
So they were like, we're going to start giving them special consideration at the parole board.
Right.
So I was like, oh shit, I might get out.
Oh, okay. I thought this the Supreme Court of the United States did. Remember, this is only
They did that.
a few years ago where they started saying, right, like 5-6 years ago.
So Miller versus Alabama came out, but they were saying that like you couldn't give kids LWOP without going through this whole process. But by then I didn't have LWOP. I was down to 26 to life. So none of those Miller versus Alabama. It did eventually, like, Roper versus Simmons was another case that came out. I started getting into the law when I was in the hole, right?
Yeah.
And especially on juvenile law. And he was the case out of Missouri where he had thrown some lady over a bridge, right, and killed her, but he was like 17. They gave him death penalty.
Right.
So that was the case that threw out the death penalty for juveniles, for anybody under 18. Well, then laws Miller versus Alabama was LWOP for anybody under 18. So then California on its own, as a result of, they quoted Miller versus Alabama in a lot of these laws.
Yeah.
And they said, if you were under 18 when you went to prison for a life sentence, you would get special consideration at the board. They would have to take the what they called the hallmarks of youth into consideration when they were thinking about granting you parole. Your immaturity at the time, impulsivity, lack of foresight because brain development, or so on and so forth. But when they wrote the first law, it was called SB 260, they said if you had received an additional term while you were in prison for a violent crime, you were out. So I was like, damn, what do I do?
Right.
Then SB 261 comes out, right? Now it changes it from under 18 to under 21. It was under 21. Or no, it's 22, under 22. So 21 and under. And they said, if you come to prison, you get the hallmarks of youth all the way up to 21. I was like, all right. But it still had that caveat that if you had an in-house, anything with violence, with a weapon,
right,
you don't qualify. So I'm like, damn, I still don't qualify.
Yeah.
Right. Then they did AB 1308, right, which said now the hallmarks of youth goes all the way up to 25. So if you're under 26, you have to get all this special consideration. Well, they left out the part about the catching the time in prison.
Okay.
It wasn't in the law. And I don't know if that was on purpose. I mean, these people are smart, right?
Yeah.
They know what they're doing, right? So they pass this law, and then somebody sues, and I can't remember what his name is at the moment, but he sues saying that it should apply to him even though he had a Thompson term. That's what a Thompson term in California is like. Any crime you committed while you're in prison, it was added to the back of your initial sentence.
Okay.
Right? So I had 2 Thompson terms that were added to the back of my sentence. So once you finished one, you start the other.
You're dead by then.
I'd be dead.
Yeah.
76 to life is what my total sentence would have been, right? So, and I've been down at the time like 24, 22. So I'm thinking, man, I'm screwed. But then AB 1308 comes out, and this dude sues and wins. He wins in the Supreme Court. And they said, you can't make them do Thompson terms. If you parole them on their juvenile term, you can't make them do the rest of their time.
Right.
Like any other additional cases, consecutive sentences because the law does not include that. And because it's the newer of the 3 laws, it's the one that supersedes them.
Right.
So they brought me a thing in the mail, said, you're going to board in 3 months. I'm like, 3 months? I'm like, fuck, I ain't ready. I wasn't ready. I had no parole plans. I had nothing, I wasn't even thinking about going to board. I hadn't even went to a group yet, so the parole day comes, the parole board comes. I talk to a lawyer. He comes to see me, and they give you a lawyer. Yeah, it's kind of like a public defender, right? But for parole. He comes to see me, and he's like, look, dude, you're not getting parole.
Yeah.
I'm like, I know. I said, I just wanted to postpone, but I didn't know how to do it, right? Is there any way I could postpone or stipulate? And he goes, yeah, you can stipulate. So we signed some papers, filled out some papers. He took to the parole board. Parole board said, no, you ain't stipulating. Or you come in here and talk to us, and then we'll let you stipulate. I'm like,
That's weird, right?
Yeah, I'm like,
you're just
what the fuck?
past. They're like, no.
no, you're going to
They
come in
sound
here
like
and
they
talk
already
to
have
us.
their minds made up.
Yeah, you're going to come in here and talk to us, or you're going to go, either you're going to come in here and talk to us and we're going to let you stipulate, but if you refuse, we're going to have the board without you. And then you're stipulate, we don't have to grant you your stipulation.
Right.
So I'm thinking, and my lawyer's like, dude, go. I'm like, why? Dude, I'm going to get denied. He goes, you're going to get denied anyway. Right? I go, okay. But I mean, 3 years is nothing. Right? I'm thinking 3 years, I could do that. I've done that asleep.
If you sleep hot at night, you know how disruptive that can be. When you're not resting well, everything else feels harder. Your focus, your mood, even your recovery. GhostBed is here to help you fix that. They've spent decades perfecting how to build a bed that's comfortable, durable, and designed to actually help you rest. Every GhostBed mattress features premier materials, proven cooling technology, and their exclusive ProCore layer, a targeted support system that reinforces the center of the mattress, where the body is heaviest. It helps keep your spine aligned and your back supported, so you can wake up ready for anything 2026 throws at you. Each mattress comes with a 101 night sleep trial and a 20 to 25 year warranty, so you can try it risk-free, knowing it's built to last. Shipping is fast and free. Most orders arrive in 2 to 5 days. GhostBed has great prices to begin with, up to 50% off comparable brands. And Inside True Crime listeners can get an extra 10% off site-wide for a limited time. Just go to ghostbed.com/Cox and use promo code Cox at checkout. That's ghostbed.com/Cox, promo code Cox. Upgrade your sleep with GhostBed, the makers of the coolest bed in the world. Some exclusions apply. See site for details.
Right. So he's like, yeah, but they're probably going to give you like a 10-year denial. Right. So California is 3, 5, 7, 10, or 15. Right.
Right.
Those are the denials.
Do you also think that maybe they'll say to you, look, we're denying it now, but if you do this and this and this,
yeah,
and come back in 3
well, I
years.
didn't think about that at the time. All I'm thinking about is like, I got all these violent 115s, right? So RVRs. So on top of the 2 homicides, I got 7 other stabbings I've been written up for. So I'm thinking, not found guilty on in court, but written up for and found guilty on in RVR. And that's not counting batteries. That's not counting melees. I've been told on, I don't know how many thousands of times for like having people stabbed or ordering people to be hit in some way, fashion or another. So I'm thinking, I'm not walking into the pro board because there's no distance between me and that behavior. I'm in the behavior at the moment.
It's not like you've been good for the last 8 years.
I just haven't been written up for a couple of years because at that point it was like, why even write them up? I mean, as long as I wasn't hurting anybody personally, like dude came to my door, some random cop came to my door one day. It was like Stanford Count. They just did like a big shift change where all the cops, so all the normal cops that were in the building got sent somewhere else, and then we got new cops. Permanent, right? They did every year they do their little bid or whatever, right? So we end up with this one cop comes to my door and tells me Stanford Count. I'm sitting there in my cell. I'm sitting up. I'm writing. Like, what do you mean Stanford Count? We do a standing count every day, right? At 4 o'clock, 4:30. I'm like, I ain't standing up. I just went back to writing. He was bang on my door. Stanford Count. I'm not standing for count, dude. Get the fuck out of here. He's like, I'm gonna write you up. I just laughed. I'm like, go fucking write me up. I ain't standing for count. I'm gonna hit your cell. I said, you ain't getting in my cell. Get the fuck out of here. So he goes down to the office and he's fucking complaining. I could hear him complaining. This motherfucker, I'm gonna hit. And the other cop's like, no, you're not going in his cell. No. And then my door opens. They want to talk to you in the office. So the cop that he worked with was cool. And I knew him for years at the prison. He knew who I was. He knew who I was affiliated with. He knew everything about me. So he's like, look, man, dude wants you to stand for count. I said, how about this, man? Why don't you just write me up? He goes, well, I'm planning on it. I said, do me a favor. Just write me up and just don't put a date on it. And then every day, just come in and put today's date. He goes, well, we're going to take a canteen. I'm like, I'll put canteen on somebody else's books.
All right.
I'll put packages in somebody else's name. There's nothing you do to me. You put me on C status? That means I don't have to go out to yard?
Right.
Cool. I got a pull-up bar on my light right now. I'm not worried about it.
All right.
What are you going to do?
Yeah, I like sentence. I'm going to die in here.
Yeah. what are you going to do? You write me up for last night? I said, look, bro. I said, I work with you guys. My light's on. I'm up. I'm not like, normally I'm writing at that time. That's when I usually wrote all my letters during count time. So I'm like, I'm up all the time. If I was laying under the blankets or something like that, I could understand.
All right.
But after that, that dude was cool as hell. His name was Robinson. Dude, he was cool as hell after that. But he just needed like a little bit like, I don't give a fuck what you do. You're not going to do anything to me. There's nothing you can do to me. So that attitude, though, I get told on for that attitude. Those cops have books that they write in. Everybody thinks that cops are cool. Yeah, until they put in their logbook that this dude's a dick. And that goes to the parole board. People see that stuff. So I'm thinking, man, I don't want to go to the parole board yet. I want to try to put some distance. I need to start taking groups. They want me to know this thing called insight. I have no idea what insight is, right? I read it in the dictionary, but the dictionary version of it is totally different than what they want you to present at board. So I was like, nah, I don't want to go in there. The lawyer's like, look, dude, they're probably going to give you like a 7 or a 10 if you don't go in there. Right now, they're saying they'll stipulate to the 3. He goes, you might even go back in a year and a half. So I'm like, all right. So I went in there. It wasn't as contentious as I thought it was going to be. It was just like, hey, why did you do this stuff? They didn't even care about the crime as much as they cared about the stuff in prison. They really hammered me on the prison stuff, and I wouldn't talk about it. I'm like, oh man, I did what I had to do. I was young when I came to prison. I was scared. I was a kid, all these things. I was using all these excuses for bad behavior, right? And I was telling them that, and they were like, all right. And then the last thing they asked me was like, so let's talk about your gang involvement. I'm like, what gang involvement? What are you talking about? I'm not a gang member. They're like, you're not a gang member? I'm like, no. I said, you can ask anybody on the yard. I'm not a gang member. I'm just a white dude. And they're like, all right, come back in 3 years. I was like, see, I'm not a gang member. I thought I got away with it.
Right.
I thought I convinced them.
They're not going to argue with you.
They're not going to argue with me, right? They just looked at me funny. Like, really? This is the hill you're going to die on? Right? And I didn't really consider the fact that I had probably thousands of confidential telling on me saying I was a gang member.
Right.
Right? They're not all wrong. They're not all lying, right? Maybe some of them lied.
Yeah.
But not all of them, right?
Not over the course of how many years?
Some odd years, right? So I didn't think about it at the time. Then later on, I went into another parole hearing 3 years later and got denied for 3 years, right? But I did way better. I went in there, I'd taken all these groups. I understood insight to some degree, but I still refused to take responsibility for a lot of stuff I did in prison. I was still like, nah, man, it wasn't like that. It was, I was arguing points that didn't need to be argued.
Right.
Right. I was like, it doesn't matter if I did it, right? Or not. Just because what I would do is I'd focus on one thing that they said that I didn't do, and I would argue with them about that one thing. And then they would deny me. So I got a 3-year denial, another 3-year denial. So I was like, all right, cool, whatever. I went back in 18 months. This time they took me back early because I wrote a big essay about my gang involvement, but not like, I was still deflecting. And I was still talking about like the in-house stuff, like in a vague way. There was no insight into it. It was just, I just mentioned it and I took responsibility, but not accountability. Right. Makes sense, right? So I went in there. That time I got a 5-year denial. So now it's going up. And I'm like, fuck, what am I doing wrong? I'm listening to all these dudes in prison who've got to parole board, like some of them 5 or 6 times. And so they know what I should say.
Well, they know how to get denied.
Yeah. But at the time, I wasn't really thinking it that way. I was listening to all these dudes who on the yard seemed super reformed.
Mm-hmm.
So reformed, we used to think they were lames. We're like, this fucking dude's a lame. Look at him. He's over there fucking reading a book on fucking anger management. Right? So, we fucking talking shit about these dudes, I looked at it different, right, at the time. But then when I started doing the work, I understood why the work was necessary, right? I think we were having a conversation before we got on here, but about being rehabilitated.
Yeah.
I'm never going to be 100% rehabilitated. I'm not, right? There's always going to be a stray thought or, man, I can get over doing this. Man, I could hurry up and make a quick dollar doing this, but it's always that like you build in like tools to like catch you. So, you know, you have what we call emotional relapse, then a mental relapse, and then a physical relapse, right? So somewhere before you actually do it, right? I don't even talk about drugs, but just back into lifestyle, you know, you built in, you know, stops. I call them stops. So that like, if I'm thinking something, I go, okay, give yourself time, right? To calm down. Cause a lot of times it's me wanting to fight somebody and most of my fights were out of fear, right? Like I was afraid somebody would think I was weak. So I'm going to have to go beat their ass. Just show them that I'm not weak, right? I wasn't afraid of getting hurt. I just didn't want to be afraid of, you know, my image was going to be reputation. That was the hardest thing to get rid of. Hardest thing in the world to let go of is your reputation, you know? So I had developed this whole reputation in prison for 25 plus years. And here I was coming back from the parole board, devastated that I got a 5-year denial, thinking, what am I going to do? You know? And I think God sometimes, I don't talk about God that often, I do believe, but I think God has ways of doing things. I came back from the denial. I was distraught. I was sitting there listening to all these dudes, and I'm thinking to myself, what the fuck am I supposed to do? So I took the whole transcripts once I got them to the psych. Well, as a white dude, you're not supposed to go see the psych.
Right.
But I had I still had status. So I went over to him and said, look, I'm going to go see the psych.
Yeah.
I want to know.
Psychiatrist.
Yeah. I want to see, the mental health. She was actually just a social worker, but the mental health department, right? We all called, everybody in there was called a psych, even though they weren't, right? So I went over there and I handed her my transcripts and I said, can you look at these for me and see where I'm failing? Because I'm reading them from my perspective and I think they sound great. I'm saying everything I'm supposed to be saying. And it's something I teach now. I work inside prison now. And one of the things I teach the guys is stop looking for the right answer and look for the honest one. Right? Right answers give you more time because you're searching for what you think they want to hear.
Right.
Instead of just being honest. Right. So anyway, she comes at me a couple of days later and she's like, dude, she had like all the different color highlighters and had like a little legend that she had built. And I started flipping through my transcripts and they're all different colors. I'm like, what the hell? She goes, this is where you minimize. This is where you deflected. This is where, you know, you refuse to even talk about, you know, you had no insight. You had, you know. And so I was like, well, hearing it from somebody that was not a convict in any way, shape, or form kind of gave me a different perspective, you know?
Probably thinks in the same manner that the parole board thinks.
Yeah. And I think that's where I was failing, was I kept trying to see it from my perspective and try to present them my story. And like they'd ask me a question, instead of answering the question, I'd answer the question I wanted them to ask me.
Right.
You know? And that's part of the controlling part of, you know, my personality, right? Is I'm only going to give you what I want to give you. So when I say God, so I was talking to her. There was this big war that was going on between all the whites, the Mexicans, and the Bulldogs. It's been going on, still going on. And we were, at the time, the Bulldogs had been moved off of our yard. So there was none. So we were all programming. And then all of a sudden they say, hey, we're bringing the Bulldogs back. So we're going to have to move a bunch of you guys. And they started developing these programs called non-designated program facilities in California. Like you have program facilities and you have designated ones, which all the gang members, everybody go to, and then all the non-designated ones where they're sending like people who want a program, right? So they snatched up 20 of us because they needed, they snatched up more of us, but 20 of us went to a non-designated facility or 50-50 yard, they call it now, you know, depending on who you talk to. And they stuck us in this building like all on the bottom tier. It was 4 blocks. I remember it was A section, all bottom tier from cell 101 all the way to like 115. There's 20 of us, but some of us were single cells. Some of us were Northerners, Southerners, whites. There was no blacks. Because Pleasant Valley, that prison at the time I was in, Pleasant Valley, was no blacks. Because there's a thing called Valley Fever. And the blacks out there are very susceptible to Valley Fever. It kills them. But the whites and the Mexicans aren't as susceptible to it. And even if they do get it, it's not as deadly. So there's no blacks in this prison unless they've already had Valley Fever. And so you might be on a yard with one black dude, which is weird because normally you go to a prison yard in California, it's 300 blacks, 400 blacks, 200 Mexicans, 50 whites. And that was when there was a lot of whites. You know, now it's like 10 whites and you think, oh man, we got a whole crew, you know? So it's bad now. But so they moved us to this yard and left us there for 3 weeks. And then they let us have our cell because we had 72 hours to get off, to leave the yard, according to our people. And I remember when I got there, the guys asked me, and they said, so what are you going to do, OG? Now I'm OG. I'm old. I'm in prison. I'm old now. These guys are young. I said, I'm staying. What do you mean you're staying? So I'm staying. They laughed. They're like, no, you're not. They said, what are you going to do? We'll go with you. I'm like, no, man, I'm not going nowhere. I said, look, dude, I'm going to the parole board in a couple years. I'm going home. You guys can have this fucking life. I got a fucking real shot at going home. I'm done. Because I just looked at it as an opportunity for me to flip the script, you know, because the parole board wanted something different from me. They didn't want me to, I was still, as far as they were concerned, as long as I was on any facility and I still had status and I wasn't like technically dropped out, I was always going to have status. People were going to follow the rules because I was there. I was an enforcer. I had all these people telling on me, all this stuff happening. Even when I was over there and not doing anything, I was still getting told on. You know, I was getting told on so much that I paroled. 2 days after I paroled, my parole officer comes over and hands me a confidential. Well, 1030. That's what we call them, 1030s, right? I'm like, what's this? He goes, you got told on. I'm like, I'm on the streets. Right. Who told on me out here? He goes, oh, it's from in prison. They didn't know you paroled yet. I was just laughing. I'm like, really? He goes, I didn't have to give it to you, but I thought it was funny. Right? He goes, you know, you'll never get it. He goes, you'll get told on even when you're off parole. It's just because people don't know that you're out. They don't know, you know, and you have a reputation. You're always going to get told on. And when people debrief or drop out of gangs and they debrief, they tell on every crime that they were involved in or that they witnessed. And so even though it might have happened 20 years ago,
Your name came up.
So you get a confidential, you know. So it's not that like, they're not big deals, but they're a big deal at the parole board.
Yeah.
And the parole board wants you to answer for them. They want you to have an answer for it. Right. And I just finally went in there and said, I understand why I'm getting told on. It's not because I'm doing this stuff. It's because my reputation, you know, people still see me as the person that I developed over a period of 30 years. That's a very, very, you know, big reputation that I developed over so many years. I've only been not developing it for a handful of years.
Right.
You know, and not everybody believes that change is possible. They think I'm over here hiding. They think I'm over here like just trying to do good to go home.
Right.
You know, so I get it, you know, and that was the time they let me go. You know. So.
That's all you said?
No, I mean, there was a lot more.
Well, yeah.
There was a lot more, but it was, I took I took not just responsibility, but accountability for like my gang involvement.
Right.
They asked me why I was involved in the gangs. I said, look, I came into prison young, right? But it wasn't the gang gave me a safe harbor.
Yeah.
But it also, the power corrupts and it becomes very like intoxicating, man. And then I started noticing like the praise that I was getting for putting in work was stuff that I wished I had got my whole life.
Right.
You know, if people would have praised me for the good I'd done, I probably wouldn't have came to prison. You know, but people expect you to do good.
It's the Red's parole hearing at the end of Shawshank.
Yeah.
And finally just comes in and says,
I don't care if you let me go or not.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then let him go. Yeah.
But he also takes like responsibility for like, I wish I could go back and change everything. I wish I could shake that fucking kid and tell him what he was doing. And, and so you could tell for the first time, he really like it hit him.
Yeah.
What he had done and how he'd gotten himself in there and just kind of just trashed.
And that was what I did, right? Is I built a timeline and I put every moment that led me to come to prison. And then another timeline after I came to prison that led me to the gang. And then I built another timeline that said all the times this happened, what I could have done different, what I should have done different. Now, when I was really young, I really had no choices, right? You're dictated by your family, right? Like when you're 4, you don't have the mental maturity to go, okay, yeah, your dad's being a dick,
right?
And don't get me wrong, I love my dad to death, but when he passed, it's been one of the most devastating things in my whole life. But I understand it now. I didn't understand it then, but looking back, that's the whole insight, right? The connect the dots. How did you become the person that thinks it's reasonable to kill somebody, or that when somebody does die, because like California prison system, I don't know about any other prison. I don't know how you felt or how it wasn't for you in the feds, but I remember watching people get stabbed and I'm like, man, I only got 30 burpees left before I'm done. So let me get these 30 done before they put the yard down. Because I'm not going to be able to finish them otherwise. Or, damn, I'm supposed to go to canteen tomorrow, but we're going to be on lockdown now for 3 weeks.
Yeah, Colby's heard of me, and wasn't a stabbing. I might have seen stabbings. I've never seen anybody die from a stabbing or from me. But Colby's heard the story where, after being in the medium for 3 years, you see so much stuff. You see so many fights and you're just like, I'm just over. Not that I'm a part of it, but it's just like, this is just so stupid.
Yeah.
I'm just, you're desensitized.
Yeah.
And so I was below. I'd been there a few months, and this guy, he'd been complaining of heart pains. People have probably heard this story, I'm sure. Heart pains. He went to medical, and they said, come back tomorrow. And he came back the next day. He said, no, come back on Monday. And he's like, this is killing me, man. Is it big, baby, probably 30 years old, big fat black guy. And he's like, it's really killing me. And like, it hurts. Something's wrong. And they're like, bro, come back on Monday. And so I was at my locker. We had like the 3-foot lockers, right? And, you use the top of it for everything. Right. And I'm sitting there doing something. And we had at the low, you had the 5-foot wall. So I could just see over the 5-foot wall. And I see him coming. He's coming down the hallway. And then he falls right in front of my cell. And there's no door. So it's a cube. He's a big fat guy. And the way his body hit the ground and rocked, so he kind of slid a little bit, and then his body like rocked back and forth, like no muscle tension at all.
Yeah.
He's done. I knew right then. I think he was dead before he even hit the ground. He was dead.
Yeah.
And he boom, 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 and people start, they're yelling his name. They're like, oh, what's a? And my first thought was, because I was from the medium, this doesn't really happen at low as much, but I thought, it didn't matter. If somebody died, they're locking you down for maybe a day or two. Well, it's not always. Sometimes they open it right back up. But I remember thinking, fuck, they're going to lock us down. And I grab my coffee and I step over his body and I walk down the hallway to go get coffee because I know they're going to lock us down or I'm going to be stuck in my fucking cell and I got nothing. And so then I keep the coffee up, I come back, and of course by this time medicals run in, they put him on the fucking thing. It takes like 4 of them to lift him up. He's so big, and they're acting like they're doing his, it's all, he's dead.
Yeah,
they never die in the prison. It's always on the way to the.
Yeah.
So they load him up, and it was really kind of shocking how fast they got there. But within a minute or two, he's gone, and I was thinking like, I talked to this guy I've been there a month or a couple months, but I've talked to him several times. He's a nice guy. I stepped over him to go get some coffee. I didn't even fucking could think about it just because.
Like, I want to go get some hot coffee before I lock us down.
This guy means nothing to me.
Yeah.
This guy is a stick of furniture. It's like they're removing one of the plastic chairs in the big room.
Yeah.
Give a fuck, but he hit the ground but you become completely desensitized to it. And and looking back, I think, you just stepped over that dude.
Yeah, like it was nothing.
Yeah, like it was nothing.
Yeah. That's kind of how it is. Like, you see people getting attacked. I remember like one of the last brutal stabbings I seen, man. These 3 guys were attacking this Southerner. The Southerner was being attacked by 3 other Southerners. I mean, and there was blood everywhere. I was just thinking to myself, I looked over and I went, damn, I'm supposed to take a test tomorrow, for my building maintenance program. Right. And I'm like, I'm going to miss that fucking test. And I know that Mr. Hono, his name is Mr. Hono's going on vacation for like a couple months. I'm not going to get my certificate, for a long time.
Yeah.
I want to get to the next level. I didn't give a shit.
Yeah, this guy's still being stabbed, right?
Yeah, he's still being stabbed.
So it's going through your head while he's still being attacked.
Yeah, I'm not even watching it.
Away.
Yeah, I'm not even looking. I went back to doing my burpees thinking, damn, man, I'm not going to be able to get this fucking test done.
Yeah.
And he's going to be gone. He's going to be on vacation. And wow, just my luck,
Yeah, if you're not a psychopath before you go into prison.
Yeah. And I don't think that qualifies. I really don't think that qualifies, right? And I don't think it's a level of violence either. I don't think violence qualifies as you a psychopath either. I think it has a lot to do. Like, do you care for people like more than you care for yourself? Yes. Or as much as you care for yourself. Let's say that, right? And I mean, not more, but I think that like if you could do that, you kind of lose the whole psychopath thing. You know what I mean? Like narcissism. Like, have you ever looked up narcissism in the DSM-5?
Right.
There's 9 criteria, and like everybody has 3.
Yeah, because everybody's on the scale.
Yeah.
At some point, you may be at a number 4.
Yeah.
And let's say it goes to 90. You might be at 9, but you're on the scale. Nobody's at 0.
Yeah. And I think that's the same thing with like sociopathy, right? Like people.
Yeah, of course. There's some people that But, and it doesn't, I don't think it has to do, it doesn't necessarily have to do with violence in general anyway. There's plenty of CEOs that are psychopaths, and they're high functioning and they're perfectly fine and they've got families and they're concerned about, but.
And that's my point.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same thing with being a surgeon and having to like cut into someone. Like a normal person cannot do that.
Yeah.
They can't physically make themselves cut into another human being.
And dig without their body.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They just can't do it.
And they just go,
right. But a surgeon, I got to get this guy's thing out. So
what are we doing? Drywall.
Yeah, I got a fucking tea time here at 4. We got to, So
they granted me parole in 2023. I remember I went to court. So, here, let's go back one thing real quick. I don't like doing this. In September 28th of 2023, I was going to court. I had been going to court since 2019 on a new law in California on the felony murder. I was trying to get that initial case dropped. Right. So they said that if you, I don't know, I'll go through the whole thing. But anyway, they said if you weren't the shooter and you can prove that you didn't have like
knowledge of it.
Well, yeah, like you weren't involved in that part of it.
Yeah.
You can get the case dropped. Right. It was more than that. But anyway, so I went back to court from 2019 to 2023. I was going back and forth to court and I kept getting denied in the Superior Court and winning in the appeals court. So every time I got denied in the Superior Court, I go to the appeals court and they say, nope, you got to have this hearing now. Go back. No, you got to have this hearing. So we went through a whole new trial almost, like an evidentiary hearing. But it was like witnesses came up, detectives, everybody came up from 1995, came back and were testifying. And eventually I got denied again by this judge. And the judge is like, hey, man, I'm going to deny you, but I'm actually going to recommend that you be paroled at the parole board. I'm like, really? Because I got denied on September 28th. I went to parole October 5th, a week later.
Right.
Went to the parole board again.
You better get that letter in the mail.
Well, he that's what I was thinking, right? But I didn't even ask him.
Yeah.
Right. I'm like, I'm pissed off that he's denying me, right? Because he's denying me based not on his reading of the law as much as on how he feels about the law.
Right.
He don't like it. He don't like the fact that they changed the law now, asking prosecutors to come up with evidence to prove an element of the crime that wasn't necessary 30 years ago.
Right.
And he said he didn't think it was fair. So he's like, basically he tells me, let the legislative judges let you out. Since the legislator made the law, let the legislative judges let you out. I'm not letting you out. Right. But he did say you're one of the most rehabilitated dudes I've ever met. Right. This is years into my rehabilitation process. Right. But he's like, dude, all the reports I get from you from the county jail, because he'd been asking about me, he's like, you're in. They're helping people with their relapse prevention plans. You're in there doing this stuff. You're not like we put you in the worst dorm in the county jail. And it was like 2 weeks later, it's the best dorm. Right. People are programming, cleaning, not bitching. Because people bitch in the county jail about everything.
Yeah.
Right. Like, oh man, you didn't give me enough freaking peas on my tray or whatever. Even some of the stupidest shit. Right. And I'm like, what are you guys bitching about? You guys are all in here for committing crimes.
Right.
If you wanted to eat as much as you wanted, just stayed out.
Yeah.
Right. So the guys, and I was like, I don't want to hear you guys bitching. Why are you guys bitching? And next thing you know, they stopped. But I also had, tattoos that indicated, who I was affiliated with. And so they sent her on my back. You don't see them now. And I had them covered up about a week before I got out. I had all my back covered up I just didn't want anybody out here to like judge me,
right.
Like if I had my shirt off for some reason. They judge me anyway. But I didn't want it to be like, oh, I know what that tattoo means, and it becomes an issue. Because I did go over to that, I don't want to say S&Y or it's not, but the 50-50 yard or whatever, and stay. It put me in a situation with my former associates that like, we're no longer on good terms. I'm not in the hat. Like, I'm not like, they're not actively seeking me out.
Right.
Things like that, right? But if I ever went back to prison, I'd be in trouble.
Right.
Out here, if they see me out here, it's not a big deal. They're not, I didn't go debrief and tell on them and do all that crazy shit that people do. I didn't do that. I just got put on a yard and I was like, well, shit, I'm staying.
Right.
I go to the parole board in a couple years. I'm staying. I'm not doing this. And it was doing that is actually the thing that gave me the opportunity to really do a lot of the work that the parole board had been asking me to do. Because over there, you're still in it, even if you're not. On this side of the yard, I was like, these dudes don't even care what I do. Like none of the inmates didn't give a shit who I was. I just did my own program. I met a couple dudes that I knew from the main line from years and years before. I'm like, oh man, that's where you guys were at. I didn't know. So And we hung out, and they were working for the same thing. They were trying to get out. So when I got granted parole, that's one of the things he said. You finally took responsibility and accountability for all your prison stuff, you know, because you were honest with us, we're going to let you go.
Right.
But I'm like, shit, I should have been honest years ago. Right. You know, I was thinking to myself, and I got out on March 13th of 2024. You know, now, ironically enough, I work in prison, you know. So I go back in now, and I spend 4 days a week with 300 different guys, and I work teaching them the things that I learned that got me out, right? But not so much about how do you manipulate it.
Yeah.
Even though you can see guys, that's all they want.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Fake it.
They're going to try to fake it, but it doesn't work. These parole board members, and I try to explain that to them, dude. They see thousands of you guys a day.
Yeah.
You know, throughout their careers, they've seen thousands of you guys. You don't think that they're not able to spot a manipulator? And they're like, oh. And you don't get me wrong, they don't always get it right. There's guys now there's one guy, man, he got paroled since I've been out. Since I've been working in there, he had got granted parole. And as soon as he comes back from parole board, he's like, man, I love gangbanging. I'm like, you're a fucking idiot. And he's like, what? I'm like, bro, you're not out yet.
Yeah.
And he had his date rescinded. They took it from him. Not for that, but they were going to transfer him to one of those yards that people aren't allowed to stay on. And he refused to transfer. I said, so you'd rather do a life sentence? You talk about how your old lady's sick and dying.
Yeah.
You know, and so you're going to miss out on all that.
Because he wants to save face.
You want to save face, right? And I told him, I said, dude, the prison that you're in, it's a really low level prison. I work in a low level prison.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, you're already not gangbanging.
Yeah.
You're just saying you are. You know what I mean? Because you don't have any write-ups. You haven't done anything. And if this is what you want from life, then you're home. Then why even try to go?
Right.
Oh, man, he don't like me much anymore. But he comes with a group still. But you can tell he's like so butthurt about losing his date. But I'm like, you lost your date. You gave it back. You know, they gave it to you and said, yeah, you can go home. And you was like, nah, I don't want it. And you gave it back to them. I said, it might not have been something you did at the parole board, but you act like these people around here aren't telling on you.
Right.
You know, I said, if you got 2,000 dudes on the yard and only 10% of them are snitching, that's still 200 people that are telling. That's a lot of motherfuckers, you know?
You know what RDAP is?
Uh-uh.
It's the Residential Drug Abuse Program in federal prison. And it's a 9-month program, but shit, some people will be they'll be in there a year and a half. They just keep recycling them.
Yeah.
Because they're fuck ups. But I would see guys go to the program, come back, and like they bring them back. So they put them in a special unit. They go through the program, then they'd come back after 9 months. They graduate and they come back and they would walk in and guys be like, oh, they call them like a super dappers. Like, oh, you're a super dapper. Like you're all better now, right?
Yeah.
Like and these guys, shit, man, I fooled them people. I was faking that shit. And it was just like, you know, like the thing is the RDAP program it really lowers the recidivism rate. Like people go in that program and they don't come back. But you know, but there are the guys that come in and I'm thinking to myself, like, because a couple of these guys made a crack about you being a super dapper now, which means like you're a good guy. Like, oh, you're a good citizen now.
Yeah.
You had to jump in and throw that in there. And you don't know which one of these guys is going to get on the computer because you don't have to write a note in federal prison. You get on the computer with your regular email system and you can send a member right there to staff. You can send a note right there to staff. You can write the head of the fucking RDAP program. So-and-so just came in here and said he was faking, and these guys will do it. They'll all do it.
Yeah.
So you walked in there because a couple of guys were joking around. And these are your buddies. They're not, you know, and maybe they're haters.
Yeah.
But you're just saying stupid shit, and you're going to come right back here with that attitude. You're going to come right back here. You know, you're there. It's about changing your attitude. To stay out of prison, you have to change your attitude. It's not just because if your attitude changes, your outlook changes, then your behavior changes
all the time.
You know,
we say there's 3 elements to remorse, right? Like remorse isn't like I feel bad. 3 elements is like you have to change your heart, change your mind, change your direction.
Right.
And that's what you're talking about. You're talking about perspective. Right. Change your perspective in life. Change your attitude about life. Right. Like I tell people all the time, I was talking to some lady this morning and she goes, man, you really deserve to be out. And I go, no, I don't. I don't deserve a day of freedom, but I earn it every day. I wake up every morning knowing that I've been gifted with freedom. It's not a freaking right. You know,
Right.
I don't deserve it. I mean, I'm responsible for too many people's lives being destroyed. I don't deserve, by the law, I probably should have never got out, right? Just because they changed some random law. But morally, them people aren't coming back. Their families aren't getting their family members back. I mean, not even the ones that I was involved in, just say the ones that maybe I ordered or, stuff like that, I was like, man, I don't deserve none of this. But that's also makes me super grateful to have it at the same time. So what I do every morning, I wake up and I'm like, all right, another day, another opportunity to earn what I have,
Yeah.
And it's not, sometimes that just means kicking back. Just taking care of myself.
That being grateful is what'll keep you out.
Yeah, to keep me out. So that dude is not grateful for anything he has. The dude I was talking about. I had a question for you though. When you were in prison, before you went to prison, and you're committing all your crimes, right? How often did you look over your shoulder?
Almost never. I hate this question because everybody would always I wasn't in a gang or violent, and despite me being here today talking to you, even though I may seem a little arrogant, you have no fucking idea how arrogant I was on the street. Maybe prior to prison, I was so overwhelmingly confident and arrogant and narcissistic. And people always say, when I was on the run for 3 years. They're like, bro, I got the FBI, the Secret Service, the Marshals. They're looking for me nonstop. And people will always say, bro, you must have been looking over your shoulder the whole time. And I wasn't. I'd pull over. I got a driver's license. I'll get a ticket.
Yeah.
The car's in the name of the ID. It's an ID issued by that state.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I've got passport. I was never looking. I never felt like that. It was so, because I know I want to say what I know people, I want to make it sound not
so arrogant
and glamorous.
Yeah.
And I don't want to make it sound like that, but I don't want to lie either. And so I didn't feel that way.
Yeah. Because I would say I don't either now, right? When I was living that life, I wasn't either. As a kid, I never thought I was going to get caught for anything.
Right.
It just never occurred to me that possibility. I am so good at committing crimes, even though I was locked up all the time.
Right.
In my brain, I was so good at this shit.
Yeah, that's how I got them. Every time I did get away from something, I became you get more and more emboldened. You start thinking, I'm just that good.
Well, and that's what, so we talked about the robbery on the Vons, right? The first one, I was profusely sweating. It was, oh my God, everybody, they're going to see me. And then by the end, I was just like, boom, boom, boom.
Yeah,
it's a job.
So confident.
Yeah, it's a job. Boom, boom, let's get it done. And I was the same with stealing cars. When I was stealing the first couple cars I stole that weren't family members, it was took me 10 minutes to get the ignition, but that felt like 10 hours in somebody else's car waiting for them to come out of their house, Then by the end, it was take 20 seconds, and it was just boom, take off. There were times people left their car keys running in the front driveway, and I just go there, boom, take off. Never even think about it, afterwards. Just look in the rearview mirror a couple of times. I got around the corner, I'm good. Once I get but in prison, there was this thing I used to say that to people. I used to be at the top of the woodpile, right? And there's always people trying to pull me back down, right? Trying to take my spot.
Right.
So I had to constantly be ahead of everybody, constantly thinking about what today. So at the end of every day, I would sit in my bed and I'd think about bar box locked, nobody's coming out anymore. And I'd sit there and I'd go, okay, where was everybody stationed at on the yard? Northerners, for example, they always had people stationed at the yard. All right, who's talking to who? All day, all night. I would, not all night, but for an hour, I'd review every interaction that I had, every little thing that I noticed that was different, out of place. And then what did that mean? And then what did I need to do tomorrow?
I see that's a lot of anxiety.
It's not really, it didn't create anxiety. It's like a chess game.
Oh, okay.
Right. For me, I'm not an anxious person in general. So it wasn't that. It was just okay. It's for me, it was building concrete. Right. Okay, today I need to level the land. I need to pack the dirt. I need to put up the string lines. And then I would think, okay, tomorrow I gotta go in. You know what? I got to build the forms. I want to make sure I get the rebar in. But I noticed that the dirt on the corner over here was a little soft. So I got to go, it's the same. It's just planning for the next day.
Right.
Planning for the next game. Or if you're you want to use a sports analogy, it's planning for the next game. It's watching film, so the next game. And that's just what it felt like. It's like every day I just sit in there and go, okay, all right. Now I need to go talk to this dude. I need to talk to this dude tomorrow. I need to make sure I get this taken care of. This dude was out of place for some reason.
That sounds like setting up a scam. I would
Yeah.
do that. I would like write everything out. Don't forget this. Got to do this. Got to get this before I get this. Got to do this, but I could do this at the same time.
Yeah.
By the time that comes in, I'll have already gotten this. Like
that skill, and it is a skill, if it's developed for good, is awesome.
Yeah.
Right. Because that's what I do today. Right. Like tomorrow I got to go into class, for example, or Monday I have to go into class. I already have the whole curriculum planned out for the day, you know?
Right.
And I've thought about it and I'm like, okay, this is what I need to talk about. This is how I want to present this. This is how I probably get the most effect, you know, things like that. So like that being able, and then reviewing the day, like who in the group like understood what I was talking about, who didn't, right? Who was getting it, who was fucking off, you know, things like that. I review it afterwards so that I know like who I need to focus on. Because I don't focus on the guys that are fucking off. I don't. Right? You want to fuck off? That's your, my time's value.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I got something you don't. It's called freedom.
Yeah.
You know, and you want it, but you're fucking off. So the guys that are interested, the guys that are taking it in, are the guys that I focus on, you know, and the other guys that are fucked, because I was that guy that fucked off in class.
Right.
I didn't care about getting freedom. I went to class because the pro board said I had to, not because I wanted to. It's just in the beginning, I didn't go for that. I went, pro board said I got to take classes. Okay, I'm going to take these classes. Anger management. I ain't got an anger problem. I wasn't mad. I was calculated. Right. I wasn't angry. You know, this got to be stabbed. I'm not mad at him over it. He just has to be stabbed because he violated the rules. You know, you put everybody else in jeopardy. You know, that's how I felt about it at the time. Like people get killed, shouldn't have done what you did. Yeah, sometimes it was unjust. Right? People didn't do something or they got hated on or whatever. But then I'd always say, you joined the gang. You knew it was dangerous when you took it.
You know, I used to always say that if you get stabbed in prison, you brought it on yourself.
Yeah.
Almost always, you know, you ran up a debt, you talked bad about somebody,
yeah,
you gambled, or you know what I'm saying? Like you did something. And typically they give you lots of chances. It's not like, hey, he was disrespectful, I'm gonna go stab that guy. Oh no. There was lots of chances for you to check out, you know, or get off the yard and check in or do this, or get somebody to send you money or do this or work it off somehow, or like there's a lot.
There was a guy, man, asked me one time, he goes, there was this guy on the yard, his name was LJ. And they were like, man, why do you give LJ so many chances? I said, because I can't stand him. And they're like, yeah, you think? I said, no, but by the time I get him, by the time I have this dude removed, if he survives this and he gets back to the hole, he's not going to have any leg to stand on.
Right.
He's going to talk to them and they're going to be like, dude, you should have been gone a long time ago. If it were me, you know, right. And then they would always say, it doesn't pay to be Tommy's friend, you know, because my friends, if they fucked up, are gone quick because you're next to me. Right. I have to be able to trust you, you know, with everything. So, you know, you build a coalition. I have to be able to trust you. I can't trust you. You're gone. Gone. I might not have you stabbed, but you're going on the next mission. You're out, you know. And then I always believed in the philosophy, every time you send 2 enemies to the hole, you send 1 friend, you know. So like, for example, this guy's a dope head, and you know, people knew I didn't like the dope fiends in prison, right? So I would always say, okay, you owe $10,000, or you owe $2,000, you owe $500. The $500 guy, you need to stab the dude.
Right.
No. You're like, no, man, $2,000 guy, you stab the $500 then. And one of them's leaving that day, right? One's getting stabbed and one's going to the hole. But every time I did that, those guys would get mad at me. It's because they didn't want to leave. They didn't want to stop getting high. So they get back to the hole, and the guys in the hole, they would talk shit about me. You know, but I didn't really care. My reputation, you know, I say I lived beyond reproach. I followed the tenets of the Lupal to a T. I didn't break the rules. I didn't use drugs. I was never in debt. I never owed anybody nothing, you know. So I wasn't worried about any of that stuff. But if you allow too many people to say bad things about you, then it becomes true, even if it's not. So every time I sent 2 or 3 guys to the hole that I knew were going to talk shit, I'd send somebody that's going to talk me up. You know, it was just another way of, you know, staying in power, you know. You had to in that environment, you know. And if you didn't, and that was one of the things I was talking about earlier, most dope fiend shot callers got taken out quick. Within a year, they would wreck themselves. I stayed a shot caller for 20 years, you know. That's a long ass time. And I did get stabbed, but not because of that, which was ironic because I got stabbed because of my co-defendant on the first murder. His name's Tommy. We're the same age. We came into prison at the same time. Our numbers are only like 100 or 2 apart. So mine was K70905. His was like K71 something, right? So they were right next to each other. So I got a phone call came in from another prison to the prison I happened to be at. Well, Tommy Miller was there too, but he just happened to be on another facility. And the guy goes, "Hey, is there a guy there named Tommy?" "Yeah." "Is he about this age?" "Yeah." "Is he one of the ones that stabbed Colgrove?" "Yeah." "Well, he needs to be stabbed." So they stabbed me. 2 guys came over and started stabbing me, hit me 18 times. So I get back to the hole, after I refused. Most of the wounds were superficial. You can see some of the scars on my head and stuff where they stabbed me in the face and, in my chest and my back and stuff. And I get to the hole and the guys are like, "Why did they stab you?" I'm like, "Fuck, I have no idea." And one of the guys that stabbed me PC'd up that same day. Like when they got to the back, he just immediately told the cops, "Hey man, I don't want to be anywhere near these guys. I think I fucked up." The other guy lost his eye when we were fighting. I put my thumb in his eye and it was in his eye. So he wasn't back there for about 3 weeks. He was in medical getting his eye tended to. So when he showed up, he said that they ordered him to hit me because this dude did it. This other member of my organization had me whacked. And it didn't make any sense to all the other guys from the organization. Like, he's a good dude.
Right.
And then one of the guys that ordered it from the yard that got the phone call was ordered to report to the back. So next time something needs to be done, you need to come back here and answer for this, for having me stabbed. So he comes back there. He said, "Well, dude called and said this, So when they wrote me a kite, I said, "So-and-so said to stab the dude that stabbed Colgrove." I'm like, "Which one?"
Right.
And they're like, "What do you mean, which one?" I said, "Well, my co-defendant's name's Tommy too." "Are you serious?" "Yeah, Tommy Miller." And Tommy Miller was in the back. He was already in ADSEG too. So, and he was the one that had the beef with that dude. They had like a falling out when they were in the shoe together. So it was just a stupid mistake, but could have cost me my life, but I'm grateful it didn't. It actually taught me a lesson that day. There's a lot of stuff that happened in prison. A lot of things took place that I'm not proud of them. I'm glad I went through them. I'm not going to lie. Like I'm not happy for the victims in the case, right? And I'm not, but I'm also not, I think that life has a way of working out if you let it, right? If you allow yourself. And in my case, man, I'm out. I'm doing well. I got a really good life. I'm grateful for every moment. I don't like being out here in Florida. I never thought I'd come to Florida. I sat in prison thinking, man, it'd be nice to go to the Everglades. I want to try to wrestle an alligator or something, but, but it's not, not that I'm over here doing that, but here I am,
Mhm.
and it is as humid as they say that it is.
It's fucking horrible.
Yeah, it's terrible. So I have a YouTube channel, Cell Block 64. I've started to put out content. I'm trying to, work, do interviews with guys coming out of prison, specifically California. I do have opportunities coming up. I also have more content coming out. I've interviewed a few people. I work with DLC TV Unleashed. He does most of my editing. I'm not good at that part yet. I'm trying. But I don't want to just talk about prison. I want to evolve, right? So right now, that's what I have,
Right.
Yeah.
But
I want to evolve into like other genres too, So, if you can subscribe, hit the notification, all them things, watch the videos, help me out here. I'm struggling, but I'm actually doing well. Actually, I think for somebody who hasn't been on there very long, 500 subscribers. I had 300 subscribers before I even put in a video, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's not too bad, but I'm also open to questions. I think that for me, it's one of the things that I'm willing to answer questions, Not saying you're not, but a lot of people don't. A lot of people on YouTube, you'll ask them questions and they'll never get to the answer. Like I'm curious about this, and or they'll tell a story and then you just never get the full version of it. I don't mind going back. I'm just trying to do something with my life that's not backbreaking. You know, I'm almost 50. You know, I don't sound that old, but I know I don't have 25 years of putting in concrete.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't, you know, so this is what I'm trying to do, you know? And
I got out when I was 50.
yeah, I got out at 46. I'm 48. I'm going on 49, but I mean, that's close enough, man.
Yeah.
You know, it's there.
Things hurt.
Yeah. You know, I told my wife, she goes, I started doing peptides,
Mhm.
right? And she's like, why are you doing that? I said, because I want to be able to breathe and tie my shoe at the same time.
Yeah.
I mean, simple as that. You know, I gained 40 pounds when I got out of prison, and not good pounds. You know, when I first got out, I was doing really well. I was lifting weights. I was shooting steroids. I got super big, and I was doing really well. But then as soon as I stopped the steroids and I stopped working out, it all went to my belly, and trying to get rid of that shit now.
Problem is that food is so fucking good out here.
Right?
I mean, these, you know, you go to dinner with someone, they're like, oh, what do you know, my wife will be like, what do you want? I'm like, I promise you, anything on this fucking menu is amazing. Like, I'll take any, I mean, I have never gone to dinner and not had something that wasn't, even if I order the wrong shit, it's amazing.
Yeah. I went to Cracker Barrel last night. I'd never been to a Cracker Barrel, right? So we went, and it was, I was like, man, this shit is awesome. And my partner, a friend of mine that was there, he's like, really? I go, bro, don't get all bougie. You did a bunch of time too, right? This shit is way better than what we were eating in there, you know? So, and I feel that sentiment too, but there are places I won't go back to. Like the food, it wasn't that it wasn't great. It's just, I really just didn't like that style of food or whatever, right? But like I was going to this restaurant like at least once a week over there in Monterey, and it was a seafood restaurant. Man, I'll tell you what, I didn't know that seafood could taste that good. I'd stopped eating it in prison. You know, when I was in prison, I was working out a lot. I would buy tons of mackerel, tons of sardines, and I would just eat them out of the bag. I wouldn't even bother putting them in anything.
Yeah, it's just for protein.
Yeah, and I would just like, sometimes I'd drink water with it to like a pill, you know? And then the little fish patties they gave you, they were garbage, right? I got out of prison, and I didn't think I wanted to eat seafood anymore because prison had just ruined it. I went to this one restaurant and I seen this fish go by, and I was like, man, that fucking looks good. Let me get that. So I ate it, and man, it tasted so good. I was like, I started going back every week. Every time I got paid, I'd go to that restaurant, you know? It was expensive too, though. You know, that was one of the things I didn't realize when I first got out of prison, how expensive everything was. I mean, we live in California too, so I don't know what it is like out here, but $7 for diesel, and I drive a diesel, you know? I'm like, damn, that shit's expensive. It ruins it, you know? The whole experience. I can't even buy a house.
The house I live in is probably 300, maybe 400, about 400,000.
I say
400, 400,000 in California is probably worth
Millions.
1.8,
How big?
it's 2,400 square feet,
Is it
4
close-
bedroom,
Close to, oh yeah.
3 bath, 2 car garage, brand new community.
Yeah.
And
You're talking at least 800. And it only depends on where in California. So like if you were in the Bay Area, you're talking $2.5 million.
Yeah.
If you're in LA, it's like $1.5 million. San Diego, $1.5 million. Fresno, $1 million.
right.
You know, some places in the Central Valley, Madera, a place like that, like 800,000, right? Just depends on where you live. But yeah, California's fucking expensive, man. I was looking to buy a house when I was still in Monterey. I couldn't even think about buying a house.
Right.
You know, it's just, I was in a 2-bedroom apartment that was like 650 square feet. I was paying $2,250 a month, you know, in rent. I was like, there's absolutely no way I'm going to be able to buy a house over here. But I got lucky. We now own 20 acres, but just by happenstance, you know, like we've moved off of that property probably 15 rollaways of junk, you know. So when we got the property, it's just full of junk. There's 7 houses on the property and a church. The only thing that wasn't falling apart was the church. All right. So we sold the church and it paid off 90% of the property. And then the other houses, we started remodeling them, you know, but we rent 2 out and we live in 1. And then we're in the process of remodeling some of the other ones, you know, but it's like you're taking all this junk.
Right.
Some of it I'm recycling because metal is recycled. I don't give a fuck if I drive it down the hill and get $100, It was $100 I didn't have yesterday, and it's free. This is junk they left on the property. They left us tractors. They left us all kinds of shit. There you have it. A crane, a bus that still runs, like a tour bus, a crane that still works, I'm like, what the fuck? But they were like some militia.
I was going to say, it sounds like.
We have a cemetery, dude. Like literally, we have a cemetery with people in it.
It's cool.
Yeah.
I think that's cool.
Well, the thing is I don't have
Halloween.
to pay taxes
Yeah.
because it's a cemetery. I just have to file for it. I haven't filed for it yet, but trust me, that's getting filed, And then they just put a new person in there, like recently, right? Legally. We got a
Right.
permit for it and everything. We all have permits and shit for everybody that's in there. But what had happened was the church was connected to like some militia.
Mhm.
They got busted with all kinds of machine guns and shit. So some people went to jail. The rest of them moved to Idaho, and then they sold the property. But it was on the market for 9 years. Nobody would buy it.
Because there was all the junk. Because it was
Yeah, a lot of junk, and a lot of people like have bad juju, with the property. They're like, bro, there's cars buried out there. There's probably other people that aren't in the cemetery. Some of those bodies probably have more than one person in it, right? They're telling us this stuff after we bought the place. People because we're not from that community,
right.
And the people from the community are like, dude, you bought that property? There's a reason why it was on the market for 9 years, Give a fuck. I lived in prison for 30 years.
Yeah.
I don't give a shit about none of that. I'm so far away from everybody else that, they'll say you can't throw a rock and hit your neighbor. I can't shoot and hit my neighbor. I don't shoot, by the way. I don't have guns and I don't shoot. But I'm just saying, if I did, I couldn't even use a slingshot and hit my neighbor. Put it that way. And I love it that way. But it's an hour. It's inconvenient. It's like an hour to Walmart to even get groceries.
Right.
So it's inconvenient. Anytime we go down the hill, it's like we have a list and we're down there all day, because we live in where the Sequoia National Park is at?
No, but I've heard of it.
Yeah, we live right next to it, like 3 miles from the entrance. So it's like beautiful. We get a lot of tourists, So we're thinking about my mom in that community, my mom owns like Airbnbs. So we make tons of money off of that. Not me, my mom does. But, it's a nice area. I love it up there. At first, I loved it. Then I hated it. But now I love it again, right? I went to that thing where it was so inconvenient to get anything done that I started like, fuck, we shouldn't have moved up here. And then I was like, fuck, I'm glad we moved up here. Because every time I go to town, I don't want to be there. I'm like, I can't fucking stand it down here.
How did you get the job at the prison?
I got recruited. I had to fill out paperwork and an application, right? But I actually got recruited. One of the guys that I worked with in prison, the organization I work for, is in every prison in California and even into USP in Victorville. And what happened, they just started there recently. But what happened was the guy that I worked with in prison, that was my life coach, that's my title. I got out and I was doing really well. I started my own handyman service. I was doing really well. And he's like, bro, you should go back in and talk to the guys. I'm like, nope. He goes, come on, man. I go, no, I'm not going back into prison, bro. I said, I have a map of California on my wall, and every prison that's on there, I have a mark around it so I can drive around it so I don't have to see it, And then I said, when I do get inconvenienced by having to drive by one, I put on my blinders. I don't want to see the motherfuckers, right? But he kept getting at me and saying, hey, man, you should go in. You should talk to these guys. They need you. And then I started thinking about it. Like, had they not got out, had this organization hadn't come into existence, I wouldn't have got out, right? Not only because of the work I did with the guy, my life coach, but also their advocacy was like, they're the ones that wrote SB 260, SB 261, 1308, all the laws that affected me when I worked at a parole board. These are the ones that got it passed. They're the ones that, so I was like, I kind of owed them a debt of gratitude, and they were looking for people with my history to go back into the prison, because it's easy for some guy who got to prison and never got in trouble to get out, right? Especially in our environment now. But how is he going to connect to the guys in prison that have been getting into trouble but are now trying to get their lives together?
Yeah.
You get a guy who had a reputation for being a jerk, right? For being, involved in everything, comes back into the prison. How the fuck did you get out? I got out because I did the work, right? There's no shortcuts. I use an analogy. I said, the door to freedom is square for a reason. And I said, why? And I said,
You got to be a square.
you got to be a square to get out, right? And if you cut a corner, it's no longer square.
Yeah.
Right? I draw it on the board, right? If you cut that corner, is it a square? And I said, no, you ain't getting out. There's no shortcuts. There might be there might be for some people. I understand that your situation was different, but for prison, California prison, that doesn't work.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's people, we can use big names, people that are out now, but if they've testified in court in the feds, they've testified in court up and down California, throughout the country, they were being placed in hotels while they were doing it, but they still weren't getting out until recently, right? And why? It wasn't because they didn't do the work. They were still, even though they were telling on everybody, right? Let's be honest, that's what they were doing. And I don't care that that's how they got out. It's cool. Good for you. I'm glad that, whatever.
That makes two of us.
Yeah, right? But I'm just saying, I don't really care about that part of it. But that doesn't work for everybody.
Yeah.
Not everybody has that opportunity. Maybe not everybody was so deeply entrenched in that lifestyle that they have the valuable information that they needed to get out. So how else are you going to get out? The pro board, right? It's an avenue, and it's the only one you have. So let's go. So I started looking at it like that, and I was like, at one point I would probably, we talked about this, I think, over the phone. I respected that about you. You were cool with that. You're clean about, how you got out, right? How you got your time reduced, right?
I cooperated.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to dance around it.
I'm just saying.
You're not going to hurt my feelings.
No, I was thinking to myself when I first watched it, I was like, it's not that you were unapologetic. It was that you prioritized you.
Yeah.
Over everybody else.
Nobody else cared about me.
No. And I thought to myself, I said, that's bold for one, right? But it also shows a tremendous amount of awareness. Hey, you know what? I have this opportunity. And you were right. The people you were cooperating against weren't great people.
No.
Right? We were talking about Herc, right? I remember that interview. I was laughing.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And he got all upset.
He got so much more upset than that interview shows.
Yeah. You talked about that with that other guy. You were talking about it one day, right? And I was laughing because I see that in him. Mm-hmm. But here's the thing. Every single person that he's ever interviewed has the potential, if not already, cooperated in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Trust and believe that, right? And I didn't watch all his interviews, but I did watch some of them, and I guarantee you some of those dudes are cooperating in some shape, right? So for him to take this high horse, you stupid motherfucker, everybody cooperated against you.
Yeah.
And you sat in prison, I'm down. I did all this time for somebody else when I didn't have to.
We've had multiple guys on the channel who've cooperated, who didn't. They're like, yeah, good lawyer, bro. I got 2 years. And you're like, no, you got 2 years for a gun possession? You're a felon who's been to prison 5 times and you got 2 years for a felon in possession of a gun?
Yeah.
The mandatory minimum in the feds is 3 years.
Yeah.
And there's no way you're getting 3 years.
You're getting more.
And they're getting, you're an armed career criminal and you've been already arrested gone to prison 4 times for drugs and violence. It's a 30-year sentence.
Yeah.
Maybe 15, maybe 20.
Yeah.
But you got 2. It's it's not my place. Absolutely. People are like, you should call people out. I'm not calling anybody out.
So that's one of the things. That's why I named my YouTube channel Cell Block 64, right? So most people don't know what it is. They think it's like a prison or a block, but it's actually just an industrial cleaner.
Okay.
It's an ammonia-based cleaner that they give, that's made by the Prison Industry Authority in California, right? And we use it to clean our cells.
Yeah.
In prison, that's what they give us to clean our cells or clean the day rooms or showers or whatever. So I should say keeping it clean. Let's just tell the truth. And I'm not going to do like you said, I'm not going to just call people out on their shit, but I may make some addendums, to videos look, You know, it might not happen exactly like he said it did or whatever. Or I might confront them at the time. Like, hey, could it have happened differently? You know, were you there?
Right.
You know, because I get a lot of that. Like people weren't there and they tell these fancy stories. I'm like, I know you weren't there because I was there.
Right.
You know, I was there and you weren't on the yard. But I respected the fact that when you said it, there was no apology in it. It was like, look, dude, I did this and I'm not sorry, even to him, you know, to her, you know. And then I like what you said in that one video. There's absolutely no way he had read my shit or seen any of my videos
Oh, yeah.
before he put me on here and then turn around and claim that I don't work with people, you know, who cooperated or, you know, stuff like that. Right. And I was laughing. I was like, that's funny as hell, you know, because it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. I think if I would have had my time to do over again, I'd have done it a long time ago.
Right.
Like I went to that 50-50 yard thing. So what made that yard really bad was it was a PC yard before it became what they did in California, they decided to take different facilities, mainline facilities and PC facilities, and they say, okay, we're going to now call this a program facility, non-designated yard, meaning, and this is a GP yard, so all these dudes are gangsters.
Yeah.
And we're going to take dudes and put them over there.
Yeah, that's the bad.
Boom, right? And then we're going to take dudes from here and put them over there. And boom, it erupts, right? Well, I was one of the ones who went from one of these to that one.
Yeah.
And when I got over there and I noticed that nobody gave a shit about me, my reputation or anything, I'm like, I should have did this 25 fucking years ago. I'd have been out.
Yeah, I'm not on a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Nobody ever says anything ever.
Yeah.
I don't, you know.
Yeah.
And,
who gives a fuck?
right. And it's always when I was interviewed by Ian, I said to Ian, I said, you know, I had to weigh the respect of my fellow scumbag, you know, inmates, you know what I'm saying, against 12 years of freedom.
Yeah.
It was not, there was no choice at all. Like,
scale
I'll
was
take the 12
broke.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll take the 12 years like that because I'm trying to impress a bunch of guys that don't give a fuck about me.
You're not going to take care
Don't
of you
care
when
about
they get
me.
out.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. No, I thought about that too. I said, man, I wish I would have done this. I wish I'd have done that different. If I could have got less time by doing this, I would have done that. I think about it now because the people that suffered, I mean, besides myself, are the people that cared for me the whole time I was in prison, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't, so what? I was loyal to some gang. I was loyal to some people, right, that had absolutely no loyalty to me whatsoever, right? I mean, we're loyal to each other at the time. No, we're not. First opportunity they got to take over my fucking trafficking business, it was gone. If I wouldn't do what I said and I was constantly working a chess game, it would have been gone.
Mm.
You know, and I remember when I decided to step back. So before I went to that yard, I actually went to the brothers and said, I'm done. I'm going to go home. They changed the laws. Dude, I got an opportunity to go home. It was a scary moment. You know, I was thinking, man, this ain't going to work out so swell, right? But the guy was like, man, he was dying of cancer, right? I'll use his name. His name is Robert Griffin, right? His name's Blinky. He died of cancer. But he was one of the originators of the organization, right? And you notice I've been staying away from the name on purpose. But anyway, he said, if I had the opportunity to go home and take it, I'm dying of cancer. You know, he just spent 42 years in all.
Horrible, bro. Die of cancer in prison.
Yeah. He had liver cancer. He had hepatitis C that turned into liver cancer eventually, right? So he tells me, he's like, man, he gave me a couple weeks to think about it. He said, Tommy, I want you to think about it for a couple weeks. And he goes, because I want you to understand what that means. He goes, no more cell phones, period. No more drugs, cells, nothing. No more getting involved in the politics. If you don't mean, that means you don't get to know what's going on at all. You know, there's no consulting you. There's none of that, right? All that money you made is gone. You know, I'm like, all right. He goes, no, think about it for 2 weeks or give me some time, right? So I was like, all right. And there was days where I was like, yeah, I'm in. I'm back in. You know, before I made the decision, before you actually asked me. He said, I'll come back and I'll ask you in a couple weeks. We'll talk. I'm like, all right. So I go through days where I'm like, yeah, I'm out. No, I'm in. No, I'm out. Because I get to overthinking it. Like, you know, I wasn't worried about being physically hurt. I was just more worried about like my reputation that I built, and I'm just going to let it all go for what? Right. And then it was like, then the day that was the day that I'd be in, I'd be like, oh, I built this reputation. I'm just going to let it go for what? Then the days I was out, I was like, why did I even build this reputation? Like, this is stupid. It was for nothing. Right. I spent all these years trying to be this fucking dude. Now it's for nothing.
You're gonna die in prison.
I'm going to die in fucking prison. And then I went out there one day. I remember I was doing pull-ups. Comes over, he goes, so what's your decision? So I'm out, bro. He's like, he shook my hand. He's like, well, good luck, man. I was thinking, fuck, I'm dead. Yeah, I did. I thought I was dead. I was like, the way he said it was like, I thought, okay.
Wait for 3 guys to rush in right behind you.
Yep. I was looking around. I was like, but it took about probably like 6 months before I realized he was serious.
Mhm.
You know, like he was going to allow me to walk away. And I was happy about that. So when I transferred to the lower level, actually, so California started doing this thing where no matter how many points you had, if you've been clean for a couple of years, you do a behavior override and send you down to a lower level. So they sent me down to this level 3. And then I remember I walked out onto the yard and everybody there was just dope fiends. All the whites were dope fiends. I walked over to the whites tables. I introduced myself and I was like, damn, they're all dope fiends. All they were talking about is getting high. Hey, you get high, brother? No, I'm good. What do you mean? You don't get high on nothing? No, you only smoke. No. You drink? Nope. I said, bro, I'm here to go home. You know, and this is not the 50-50 yard. This is a normal yard. But I'm like, dude, I'm here to go home. And then they put me in a building maintenance class. And so I stopped going to the whites tables. I stopped even going over there. I would go to work at building maintenance. I come out, I would do burpees on the volleyball court. There was a volleyball court that had a curb, and I would do burpees in the dirt side of the curb because you're not allowed to do them on the track because people are walking and running or whatever, right? So I do my burpees there, and then I go home. Never even go see the white stables. And they got nervous about that. They were like, okay, we know who you are. Why aren't you fucking with us? I'm like, bro, you guys are all dope fiends.
Right.
All you're talking about is getting high. You're 3 weeks to the pad and you're trying to get high. I said, I don't get that. You know, you got all these opportunities. This is your 5th term. And you're 3 weeks from finishing it up and you're already trying to come back. Right. I said, I'm just trying to get one shot. So I'm going to I said, there's opportunities. And so they left me alone but they told on me all the time. That was the fucked up part. Like anytime somebody dropped out, they told on me. Anytime somebody got hit, I got told on for it. And that's what the parole board kept trying to explain to me and I wasn't getting. No matter how long I was out, as long as I was on a yard where there was active white members, I was going to be seen as an active white member. And people were going to think that I had control of the yard because you had control over it for so long.
Okay. So it's not that like they're haters. It's just that they think you're involved. And if something went on, well, he must be involved. You must be involved.
So here's a good example, for example, right? So
they're not making shit up.
No, they think that I'm calling shots from behind the scenes. So this dude, Davy Jones, has a yard. He's this white guy right there I was friends with. He's this big guy. His name is Davy Jones. He has a yard. So he orders some guy hit, right? They don't tell on Davy Jones. They tell on me because they think that I told Davy Jones to have it done.
Yeah, you're working through him.
I'm working through him because remember in the beginning, I was telling you that's what I used to do. I would show up on a yard and if the guy was running it accordingly, I'd let him keep running it, but I would dictate from behind because it gave me a lot of like security, but also like I wasn't out on Front Street.
It's the Tony Soprano model.
Yeah.
He lets his uncle be the figurehead. He's calling things, the shots behind the scenes.
Exactly.
But
right, yeah.
Because he knows at some point the FBI is going to come get him.
Yeah. I mean, and people knew that but I built that reputation. So people knew that about me. So when I showed up on the yard, even Davy Jones had the yard when I showed up. And he said, bro, you want me? I said, I'm out, dog. He goes, what? You know, he knew me. So he's like, what do you mean you're out? Are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm just out, bro. He goes, bro, are you in any kind of trouble? I'm like, no, I'm not in trouble. I'm just out. I'm just trying to go home. You know, he's like, all right. He goes, well, you know, I'm going to have to get at Grumpy, right? Grumpy was another guy on another yard to let him know you're here. I'm like, that's fine. He knows I'm here already. I seen him. Okay. But we're going to, you know, he wanted to do a double check and then came back. He goes, man, you're right. You're out. I'm like, yeah, I'm out. You know, I told you I was out. So he started telling everybody I was out, but nobody believed him. I was telling people I was out, but nobody believed him, you know, and I understand why. You know, if I were in if I was at the low end of the totem pole too, I probably wouldn't believe it either. Why would you give up all that power? Why would you give up all that money? And for drug addicts, why would you give up all the dope?
Right.
Instead you're over here going to school, right? They're looking at me, you're going to school? You're learning stuff, Because I left with college degrees and everything, right? So they're like, you're learning things? Why? I sit in the day room because I still had to follow some of the rules of prison. Like I still had to go to yard. I still had to go to the day room. If it was our tier day room, I had to go.
Yeah.
Right. So I would find a table that's all just by myself, right next to the cop shop, right next to the staff office.
Right.
Because nobody wanted to hang out there. Right. And I would do my college work in the day room. I'd sit there and study and do my homework and stuff because nobody would come over and sit down with me because they don't want to talk about dope, but the cops are right there. So I would just do it. They leave me alone. I just want to go home. They didn't believe me. But now that I'm out.
Hey, you guys, I appreciate you watching. Do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell so you get notified of videos just like this. Also, please share the video to anybody that you think might be interested. If you want to follow Tommy, we're going to leave the link to his YouTube channel. It's Cellblock64. It's going to be in the description box. Click on it, shoot over there, subscribe. He's going to have he already has great content. He's going to have more great content coming. Really do appreciate you watching. Thank you so much. And if you want to be a guest, we're going to have the link to our website, and you can go there, go to the Be a Guest page, fill out the Be a Guest application, and we will get back with you as soon as possible. Really do appreciate you. Thank you. See ya.